It looks like we're now live, so welcome everyone to the Committee on Taxation for day of work sessions on 6 bills, I believe. We'll start with introductions and we'll start with, don't see either Senator Libby or Senator Pouliot with us yet, so we'll start with Representative Bickford.
Good morning, I'm Representative Bruce Bickford. I represent House District 63, which is part of Auburn.
Excellent. And Representative Carmichael.
Morning, I'm Representative Mickey Carmichael. I represent 22 communities in Hancock, Washington, and Penobscot counties, including my hometown of Greenbush.
Thank you, sir. I don't see Representative Collings with us yet. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator Chipman. Good morning. I am Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, soon to be House District 131, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach.
And Representative Hanley.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. I'm Jeff Hanley. I represent District 87, which is the towns of Pittston, Alna, Wiscasset, and Randolph.
And Representative Setkus. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator. And good morning to those out there in the internet world. I'm Joel Stetkis. I serve the people of District 105, which are the towns of Canaan, Palmyra, St. Albans, Heartland, Ripley, and Cambridge.
And Representative Matlack.
Good morning. I'm Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Creehaven, and the Muscle Ridge Islands.
Excellent. And Representative Perry.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Perry. I represent part of Orono and part of Bangor in the main house.
And Representative Sachs, I don't see her with us. I think she's going to be in and out a little bit this morning. Representative Terry.
Good morning. I'm Mo Terry. I represent District 26, the west side of Gorham, and I serve as House Chair on this committee. Welcome, everyone.
Great. And Senator Pouliot.
Morning, State Senator Matt Pouliot, represent Senate District 15, towns of Augusta, China, Oakland City, and Valley.
All right. And I'm Senator Ben Chipman, serve as Senate Chair of the committee, and I represent Senate District 27, which is part of the city of Portland. We also have with us Lena Braun, our committee clerk, as well as Julie Jones, our committee analyst. Do you have anything for us, Julie or Representative Terry, before we get started? All set to go?
Yep, ready to go.
So I guess we're going to take the bills just in the order that they're listed on our schedule. We'll open up the work session now on LD 80, which is an act to provide critical communications for family farms, businesses, and residences by strategic public investment in high-speed internet and broadband infrastructure. We'll have Julie go through the analysis on this bill, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Should I bring up the chart?
Yeah, if you don't mind, and just kind of walk us through that on LD 80, and then we'll open up discussion.
Where did the chart go? I have the worst luck with sharing. It should be there. Try one more time here. Sorry, I don't know what the problem is. But I can talk to you about what the chart says. And it's, before I start, I'll just sort of mention that yesterday you were emailed a copy of the chart plus three of the bills you'll be talking about today, there are proposed sponsor committee amendments, and those were also emailed to you. I do have the amendments available to be pulled up. I don't know why the chart is not showing up. The first item on your list is LD 80. Oh, and I also wanted to mention for people, for members of the public who are watching the session online today, the chart and the proposed committee amendments are also all available online on the Taxation Committee's materials webpage. So they have the ability to access those in that manner, as do you, of course. But anyway, first one on the list is LD 80, which is Representative McCrae's bill, an act to provide critical communications for family farms, businesses, and residences by strategic public investment in high-speed internet and broadband infrastructure. All of the bills today are bills that were carried over from the first regular session. This bill proposed to provide that 33% of the sales tax collected with regard to sales through marketplace facilitators would be transferred to the Connect Maine Authority monthly in order to be used for the deployment of high-speed internet and broadband infrastructure to unserved and underserved areas in the state. And the bill, as drafted, proposed to take effect when approved. There were questions that were raised with regard to it. The sponsor has proposed an amendment, and I don't know if he's here at this point, but I think he was going to try to be. Oh, there he is. Yes, he is. So he can speak to it. I just mentioned it changes the title, changes the start date because it's a new year having been carried over. And it requires an annual report to the Taxation Committee and to the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee on the use of the funds by the Connect Maine Authority and on the progress of the state with regard to achieving state connectivity, which is something which is defined in Title 35A under the mission of the Connect Maine Authority, and it adds a 10-year sunset provision.
Okay. Great. And the sponsor I see is with us, Representative McCrae. If you'd like to offer any additional information to us before we start discussing the bill, that'd be great.
Sure. My intent throughout my entire legislative career has been to push the needle forward, to push forward for broadband connectivity, especially into the rural parts of Maine. That's where I live. Aroostook County is not the only rural place, so it's important to me. It's kind of a legacy thing for those of us in the legislature at this point, and it has been very long. One of the things that has kind of been not a roadblock, but something to certainly be considered, is with the federal funds coming into the state of Maine. We have a tendency to sit back and say, "There, that's going to fix it." Well, it isn't. I mean, those funds are pretty expansive, quite large. I have no argument with that, and that's great. That's fantastic. Best thing that could have happened to us. But it's a little bit on the short-term horizon. It's a couple, maybe 3 years at the most. So what this bill proposes to do, okay, in its original concept was to take a third of the funds, sales tax mainly, funds generated by internet sales, online sales, and dedicate it to that very internet that has been providing that sales tax to us. So that was kind of, I thought the synergy to that was really good. I liked that. It wasn't my idea, but I'd claim it. So what I'm looking to do with the amendment, okay, and looking at the problems that were expressed at the hearing, what I'm proposing with the amendment, and I would strongly appreciate input from the committee that would help move this forward and on into the future. Certainly what we do here today, or what we do in legislation, and what we do at ACF can be modified in future legislators. So we can't bind anybody to something saying, okay, we put this 10-year sunset in, so everybody's got to do it for the full 10 years. That could be changed in the 131st. I mean, we know that. So the objective here was to change the title a little bit, rather than having high-speed internet and stuff like that. And people that are far more involved in this than I am thought that that was a little bit redundant, and that to just say investment in broadband internet would be sufficient and maybe be more succinct to those that are really in the field. The idea is that when those funds start becoming depleted, which they're going to improve internet across the state, hopefully a very great deal in the rural parts of the state, because I think the people in the rural part of the state are a little bit of an untapped resource just because of their ruralness and lack of connectivity. It's tough to do business in an area that you don't have good broadband internet. So I guess the idea is, if this goes into effect, let's say in June of 2022, that those funds would be added to what we are able to spend and move the whole idea forward a little faster. And when those funds start depleting, this will be a reliable source of income to Connect Maine or any other authority that supersedes Connect Maine on into the future. So I think it's something that we as legislators could tie into, and there may be a way that this committee can make a suggestion, and I'm open to anything that will move this forward. I don't claim to know everything about this by any means, but I'd love to see some guarantee that this will move into the future and improve things. So with that, I think I'll just stop and answer any questions that you may have. I may be able to answer them, I may not.
Great. Thank you, Representative McCray. And I know that you've probably heard there's been some discussion about what's going on right now with all the federal funds that are available for this type of thing, and then some initiatives that the state has taken with broadband expansion that are sort of in the works right now. There was some discussion about maybe setting up a working group through this bill to look at what money's coming into Maine from the federal government, what money the state's already planning to spend over the next year or two, and then sort of where we're likely to be at that point, how many people still would need internet beyond that, and then what, if any, kind of funding would be needed through a bill like this to make sure everybody gets broadband in the state, and sort of a working group to kind of look at that if that's not already being done, is sort of one avenue to go with the bill. Is that something you would be okay with?
Yeah, like I said, if the committee, I don't want to just dump this under a smoke screen and say, okay, well, we've done it, let's go on, we'll think good about it, feel good about it. I want it to be something meaningful. If this working group, if the committee feels in their wisdom that that's a good direction to go, I don't know whether I would be involved in it or not. I would like to be, not as an expert, but as a person that has promoted this bill. So if that's the direction that we should go or could go, you mentioned, Senator, that in a couple of years when these funds have been expended or what have you, that's exactly my concern. That in a couple of years, are we going to step back and say, well, we did a great job with those federal funds, and now we're back to the same way we were in 2018 as far as funding is concerned.
Right.
When I first got involved in the preceding bills of this very same nature, I did some research, and this was 5 years ago, let's say. The projection to completely connect Maine was in the $900 million range 5 years ago. Now, I'm sure we've made some progress, but I'm sure it's gotten more expensive. So we probably are somewhere in that same ballpark now. And it's my understanding that those federal funds would probably be about half of that at this point, ballpark. So I guess I'm comfortable with the direction that this committee feels comfortable in going with. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of the concern is nobody, not really knowing what's going to be done over the next year or two, when that's going to end, where that's going to leave us, and what will still need to be done to kind of keep that work going until everybody's connected. I mean, I think we all support everybody having access. It's just how we get there, So we've got a couple of people who would like to speak. Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question or concern is, like a lot of people, I'm in an area that I can't get high-speed internet. Although there are ways to do it. And the way I've done it is if there's a cell tower, if you can get cell service, you can get fairly high-speed internet because I have it. I have it through my cell phone company. And it's not expensive, no more expensive than if I had cable. And with all the money coming in, Senator Chipman just made a good point. With all of the money coming in, this is, in my guess, this is a cash cow, isn't it? Because anybody in the northern area, in northern part of Maine that has cell service can get high-speed internet. And if they don't, I don't know. Let's get them cell service first, I guess. Can you expand on that?
Again, I could have taken broadband. I absolutely can. I could have taken broadband internet and deleted that and said cell service. Okay, it's kind of in the region that I live. I have to have a landline because if you sent me a text, I'd get it. If you called me, I would hear it ring, but I wouldn't be able to talk with you. So it's kind of the, half a dozen, 1/6 of the other. Rural areas are underserved. And if you happen to be in line with one of those cell towers, and we have them here in Fort Fairfield, we do, and we have them in most regions of most rural parts of Maine. But there are an awful lot of people right in my town, out in the country, that are far enough out so that cell service just, it's over the hill. It really is literally over the hill. So I tend to agree with you, Representative. That's why I'm kind of throwing myself at the mercy of the committee to see what we can do that will move this forward as best we can at this point in time.
Thank you. Yeah. The other thing I'm concerned about is with all these small satellites being put up, are we going to be obsolete with land lines and way of getting internet to you when all these satellites are up? I mean, why are we staying in the present and not looking to the future? I guess is my last question.
Well, I guess I've addressed that as best I can. I think this bill does look to the future. The promise of those satellites is great. The reception of federal money is great. But I look at promises as things that if it's between you and I take it to the bank. If it's between you and me and the state and the federal government and everything else, I'd like to wait and see. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yes.
Committee discussion, so we're in work session on LD 80. We had a hand up from Representative Carmichael, followed by Representative Gramlich. Go ahead, Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Senator. I guess my concern would be that, to me, it would be, this is more the final mile, right? We're trying to get service to the people in outlying areas. So once, and this is areas where it's not profitable for private enterprise to bring it in. So instead of having a continual financing way for this, aren't we just trying to get it there so that private enterprise can take it over afterwards and provide this service? I guess that's my question, my concern.
Okay. Go ahead, Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, Representative McCray. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm curious if you or someone else can help me better understand what the working group would do and what kind of objectives the working group would have. For example, would such a group make some determinations about how to proceed and then report back to the committee? I personally am all for doing everything we can in our rural communities to give a more robust broadband. And let's face it, we know that really, anything west of the I-95 corridor can be rural, even down in good old York County. There's large areas that have terrible coverage. So, I think that it's incumbent upon us to do all we can to support these kinds of initiatives, but I'm really curious about a little bit more specificity around what the working group would entail.
Yeah, so that's kind of an idea that I discussed with Representative Terry, and I think she discussed it some with Representative McCray, but the thought with that was that we don't really know sort of where we're going to be after the federal funds are spent and the state funds that we've allocated to this at this point have been spent, sort of where that's going to leave us. So the working group would, I sort of envision that as being something we would perhaps have the Connect Maine Authority or any organization that supersedes them, because I guess they're maybe changing their name or being reconfigured a little bit, but to convene a working group that would include Representative McCray, if you'd like to be part of it, others from this committee, maybe someone from EUT to be on there to look at how much money is coming to Maine from the federal government, how much money is the state already allocating to broadband expansion, where is that going to leave us when all of that work is done? How many people are still going to be left not connected to broadband, and what it is going to cost to connect those people to broadband? And if any kind of service provider tax would be necessary, how much revenue would need to be raised to connect the additional people so the work continues so that everybody's connected. I mean, I think we all want everyone to be connected. It's a question of how we get there, and a working group would look at all the things I just outlined and come back to the legislature with recommendations of whether we need any kind of service provider tax, how much it would be, what it will cost, timeline for getting everybody connected, all of that stuff. So that was the idea that I had around it, and maybe others have other ideas, but we have a few more hands up. Representative Stekis.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep. Representative Stekis, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So again, playing catch up, being new to the committee, I've actually got a series of questions, and depending on what the answer is, sort of, carries me forward. So if that would be allowed, that would be great. One of the first question would be, is the 33% that we're looking to tap into, my assumption is that goes into the general fund currently?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, what I've got to weigh is, do we take this amount of money? Have we been informed on how much the 33% would be, say, in the last biennial?
Is that a question for Representative McCray or for somebody else?
Well, whoever knows what the dollar figure would be of that 33%, we get a fiscal note or anything like that on that. I wasn't at the public hearing, obviously being new. So
I was just going to say, if I could jump in, Julie could probably answer that.
Yeah, Julie, you can go ahead.
The estimate that we had last year for Maine Revenue Services, which they described as a preliminary estimate of the revenue transfer from the 33%, was 15 to 20 million per fiscal year beginning in FY22, which would have been the first full year would be a year later with Representative McCray's proposed amendment.
Okay, forgive me being new to this. So what you just said, 15 to 20 per fiscal year. So we're looking at 30 to 40 million per biennium, per budget cycle. Is that correct?
Preliminary estimate, yes.
Roughly. Okay, so for me in this situation, I've got to weigh, taking that 30 to 40 million dollars from what's already stretched thin, very important social services that the state is funding, roads and bridges, those sorts of things. So I've got to weigh that. The other question would be during the public hearing or any other conversations, what is the actual on the ground capacity of building the infrastructure? Because one of the issues that we've run into with roads and bridges and things like that, we could raise all the money we want, but if we don't have the labor force on the ground able to do it. So my understanding is, what little bit of information I've been able to find is the labor force is already constructing as much as they possibly can with the money that we have. In fact, I think, and maybe somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, is actually, I think money is piling up with all the money that's coming from the federal government and everything else that we can't actually use because we don't have the labor force to build the infrastructure. So I've got to weigh those options of, do we take 30 to $40 million away from social services and roads and bridges to just pile up in a bank account that maybe at some later date, we're going to be able to build the infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Representative Stetkus. I believe that Representative Perry was next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to wander off the farm here a little bit. I don't have many opportunities a year to do this. When I look at this bill, and first, I really appreciate the work that the sponsors put in. I love the people of Aroostook County. I love Aroostook County, and I think this is one of the most important issues we face, getting broadband expanded and really maybe more so than sales tax for income tax, people who can actually do their work here in Maine, high dollar jobs that are able to work remotely. But when I listen to the arguments, it brings me back to a frustration of 25 years here, that places like Bangor and other service centers, we have an enormous amount of tax exempt property. We supply the services to everyone in an enormous region. All of the outlying towns who have anyone who has a problem end up in in our jail, in our group homes, in our hospitals, on our streets, in our homeless shelters. These problems don't exist in outlying communities because they can end up, anyone with the problem ends up on our local tax dollar. All the roads I drive on are pretty good. I continually vote to support broadband through rural Maine, roads through rural Maine, anything that rural Maine needs. And whenever a community like Bangor tries to diversify our revenue sources, our property, our homes are valued at roughly twice what they are in rural Maine, and our mill rate is twice what it is in rural Maine. And I always hear the argument, say on a local option, I'm not going to pay extra to come into your town. And I could argue that the vast majority of this income would be from the people in service centers and places that already have pretty good internet doing their shopping online. So I am happy to try and support you any way I can, but I just hope in the future, when bills come up that try to help out service centers who are providing such a vital service and taking the load off the rural area, that maybe we'll get a little more consideration of the challenges we face that are different from the ones rural Maine faces. And that's not directed at you, Representative McCray. It's just represented at, it's directed at a frustration I've had for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Perry. Representative McCray, you have some additional information or answers to any of the questions that were raised?
Well, I perked up when Representative Stetkus mentioned, and in a couple of years, that's exactly where my concern is. And we are going to have a pile of money in the short term. So that's a little bit of the thing. Julie, this is a question for you. I understand the 15 to 20 million, but it was my understanding that was the sales tax generated by online sales, and this proposes to take a third of that. Is that, which would change it from 15 to 20 to, we'll say 7. Is that, am I completely off base there?
I think you're on mute. You're on mute, Julie.
I'm sorry, I thought I had unmuted. I think Mike Allen from Maine Revenue Services is the Director of Tax Policy. for Maine Revenue Services, and they are the ones that put together the estimates that Maine Revenue Services provides to us. So I think if he could be pulled up to respond to that question, my understanding is that it is that figure is the 33%, not the 100%. But we should have Mr. Allen address that issue to make sure that I'm interpreting it correctly.
Yeah, welcome, Dr. Allen. If you can help us out with that, that'd be great.
Certainly. Good morning, everybody. It's a range because it's a difficult estimate to get to, and that's one of our concerns about the bill of dedicating certain revenue. Marketplace facilitators may be collecting revenue on behalf of their clients, but they also may be having direct sales themselves to customers. And a marketplace facilitator doesn't necessarily have to identify itself or identify with us. These are my sales through my marketplace facilitator role, and these are my sales from my direct sales to customers. These marketplace facilitators are going to have to identify themselves so that we can dedicate that revenue to this fund. I'm not sure how well we can do that. I'm not sure if transient rental platforms that collect the 9% lodging tax are included in this or not. I think we would say that they are marketplace facilitators, but that's another issue. It's just going to be very difficult to make sure we're transferring the correct amount of tax. The other issue I would bring up is that the sales tax form traditionally has been a fairly straightforward form, but that form is starting to become much more complicated with various products taxed at different rates. We have adult use marijuana taxed at one rate. We have medical marijuana taxed at another rate. We have lodging taxed at one rate. We have prepared food taxed at another rate. All that has to be broken out on the sales tax form by the business, by the collector of the tax. We're finding it very difficult. For instance, everybody keeps on asking us about, well, how much medical marijuana tax are we collecting? That gets taxed at the 5% rate. People are making mistakes all over the place. People that should be reporting sales on the medical marijuana line, including them just in the general 5.5% line. We have businesses that clearly are not in the business of selling medical marijuana, reporting 5.5% sales tax on the medical marijuana line. It's a hard time. It's difficult for us to really determine exactly how much we're collecting from that. Now you're asking us to take revenue from a particular source and make sure that revenue gets diverted into another fund. And that's going to be extremely difficult. And there's no guarantee we're going to end up transferring the correct amount.
Yeah.
The other issue that we have with the amendment is the June 1st effective date. Assuming the legislature adjourns in mid-April, and this isn't a 90-day law, that's going to be extremely early. And we would respectfully recommend a January 1st, 2023 effective date, because this is going to take a lot of administrative work and work on the side of the businesses to make sure that this information is collected as correctly as it can be.
Mm-hmm. I think, are you all set? Representative McCray, do you have anything else before we continue our discussion?
Well, just before you move it to a vote or something, one of the things that I do think is that if we decide to go to the work group, would it be possible to structure that as a working group as a subset of this committee, therefore coming back to you folks with the ability for you to put forth a bill if needed?
I mean, we could structure it certainly different ways. I mean, that would be one way it could be structured. I think if we did a working group, I think we'd want to include EUT, have it be sort of have them come back to both EUT and us, because I mean, they obviously would do a lot of work in this area, and we're just doing the tax side. But yeah, that would be definitely an option. We got additional discussion, I believe. Representative Bickford was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listening to Dr. Allen, it really makes it hard for me to support this. I could almost support a working group, except that we don't have any amended language to see that, and we're in a short session. We don't really have time to start tabling items. I'm going to make the motion on not to pass on this.
Okay. So the motion not to pass. Others have their hands up. I think Representative Hanley, maybe you were next.
I seconded the
I will
motion.
second that motion.
We have a motion not to pass and seconded. Continuing this committee discussion, I believe Representative Collins was next.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's premature to just dispose of this legislation. I like to see more analysis. Maybe it's out there. Maybe we just need to get it all and review it. I do know, yes, based on what everyone said, everyone's brought up some valid points. We do have a bunch of a lump sum of money federally. I do not know exactly what that's going to cover over how long. I do know that this is such a huge issue that I've been in meetings all over the state, pretty much every county over the past years. And it's not a partisan issue. If you talk to local municipal leaders in the most remote parts of the state, if you talk to anyone who's got a business, anyone that, you know, works in the library, has kids, you ask them what are the biggest issues, the biggest challenges in your community, they say it's the broadband internet and the roads and the infrastructure. Using economic metrics in Maine, or what other groups look to assess Maine's economy, one of the biggest challenges we have is we're ranked about last in our investment for infrastructure. So I know that this is an expensive challenge, that the federal money is a great gift, but it's not going to solve everything. It's not going to last forever. Maybe in the future, we're going to get further commitments for more federal money, which we can put into the equation. But I think we need to find out more about what's been allocated, what it's going to do, and what's left. It's great that the federal government's helping us out in remote parts of our state. However, as state policymakers, I believe it's our responsibility to listen to those people in the most remote part of the states that have asked us to solve this problem. And we should take the time and do our due diligence, take what's out there, assess it. And then whatever it may be, it might be part of what Representative McCray has proposed. It might be something completely different. But I think that we should find a way in the short term and the long term to look at what we need to do, put those pieces of the puzzle together to deliver to the people what they so very badly need in their communities. And again, what we have now from the federal government's great. I just know that we often look at very complex problems and we put them under the rug because we say, well, it's so complicated, we'll take care of them later. Well, I think now we got a head start with the federal money, and I think it's very plausible that we could put our minds together and find a way forward to have a long-term vision for how we take care of our most remote communities with our infrastructure.
Right. Thank you, Representative Terry.
Actually, Representative Hanley had his hand up way before me. I think he was not just making a motion. I think he was also had a question.
Yep, Representative Hanley, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A well-meaning bill. I'll give you that, Representative McCray. I understand your intent. But I got to tell you, I served on the Utilities Committee, and I think in the 129th, we voted quite a substantial transfer of money to the Connect Me Authority to do just what you're talking about doing. And also the other issue is creating another study group that would simply parallel what is already taking place with the Connect Me Authority. So you'd have two groups running along the same racetrack side by side, not talking to each other. So, I think you're duplicating what already exists. And then with the assessment from the tax people and the complexity of it, I'm not going to support, even though it's a well-intentioned idea. What you're intending is already happening. It's just you're trying to make it extremely local, but it's already happened. And I think your best effort would be directed at the Connect Me Authority, because each town can apply to them for assistance to get their programs up and running, to connect themselves. So I'm not going to support even the study group. I think that these things already exist, and it's time to let the system that's already in place work. And thank you again for this bill.
Go ahead, Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, Representative Hanley answered one of my questions about whether or not this type of working group already exists. I was hoping that somebody from Connect Maine or the Broadband Authority would have been here to help us with that. I know that they were not supportive of the funding mechanism, but I wonder if they would be supportive of the working group. So that was one thing that I'll just have to wash around in my head. And then the other was for Dr. Allen. If we do determine that a working group is the right direction for this, if MRS would be comfortable with being on that working group, helping us determine whether or not any kind of funding from marketplace facilitators would be, something that we could tighten up, so we're not making the determination of whether we're taking things from the vacation rental stuff or just from the big marketplace facilitators or the smaller ones itself. So I'm wondering if MRS would be okay with joining that group as well, if that does come up.
As long as the commissioner is okay with it, we're certainly okay with it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Representative Terry. And yeah, I guess I'd just like to chime in. I'm not convinced that what I described earlier in terms of a working group is already happening. I don't think the Connect Me Authority is looking at marketplace facilitator taxes and how much of that would be needed in the future to connect every home in Maine, and how much allocation would be needed to do that over what period of time and stuff. So what I envision with the working group, I think, is a little more in the weeds in terms of the funding side of it and what the Connect Me Authority may be doing. They may already have some information in terms of how many homes will be connected with the federal funds and with the funds they're allocating, but I'm not sure that they would, be coming back to the legislature with recommendations on specifics on funding from the marketplace facilitator side of it. So, I mean, certainly would want them to be part of the working group along with Maine Revenue Services and along with a few legislators, maybe from this committee and EUT, but I don't think that the work I described is already happening, and we certainly haven't heard that from anybody from the Connect Me Authority, because they're not unfortunately with us. So I don't feel comfortable just voting down the bill and saying they're already doing it, let's move on. I mean, this is too big of an issue for people in rural Maine, as we've heard from folks that have already spoken, to do something like that. And I'm not going to be supporting the pending motion. Next up, we have, I believe, Representative Stetkes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think there he is right there. I'm hoping that Representative Collins is sitting down, just because I think I agreed with pretty much everything that he said. Probably come to a little bit of a shock to him and probably everybody else. As far as the working group is going, in line with what Representative Hanley was talking about, is not only is Connect Maine doing a lot of what is being proposed in a working group, but DECD is doing the same thing. In fact, Commissioner Heather Johnson, and one of the things that Representative Collins did say was, this isn't a partisan issue. Representative Heather Johnson, I actually nominated her for that position, being the Republican that I am. So it is not a partisan issue, and she is the expert of experts on rural Maine broadband. She worked as our DECD person in Somerset County for years, working on rural Maine broadband. She has pretty much every single piece of information that you, Senator, and others have brought up. Not sure if this information is available. She's got it broken down almost to the penny on what it's going to cost to run, landlines to every single house in every single county. So most all, if not all, of this work is already done. So I would if nothing else, reach out to DECD. I can't support this redundancy. I mean, and this will be at least 3 or 4 times over for redundancy in this situation.
All right, I think we had Representative Carmichael next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my problem with this is, what our responsibility as a committee is to look at the funding formula, the tax, using the 33% of the tax for to fund this. And with the problems that Dr. Allen has pointed out that he foresees in it, and I myself have problems. I don't think it should be an open-ended thing. I think at some point this needs to be part of private enterprise and not the state government. Then, I'm not going to be able to support it as it is right now either.
Okay. Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just listening to the conversation. It just made me think in Bangor, when I was on the city council, we had an issue with some of the lower income neighborhoods not having access to good internet. And the city took the challenge on themselves and we dealt with it. And there's also, we keep talking about all this state money we have from the federal government. There's also a lot of municipal and county money out there, tons of county money. And we all know the counties don't have much to do. So I'm wondering if one of the missing pieces of this conversation are any of the municipalities or rural counties stepping up and dedicating any of their federal funds to address this problem? And is this potentially to some degree, duplication? So I don't know the answer. I just throw it out there.
Right. And that's something that a working group could look at. I mean, maybe if a lot of this work's already happening, they could have one meeting and determine that and come back and say, we determined that. I mean, it doesn't have to be something that meets, every week for a year. I mean, it could be something very simple, but just to make sure we're covering all the bases and looking at all the funding. Next, we have Representative Matlack. I think you're
Sorry,
on.
I thought it was Senator Pouliot first.
Oh, Senator Pouliot, maybe you were first. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Senator Matlack can go.
Thank you. A couple of concerns. One is that I believe that the state already has in place a system that identifies the money that's coming in from the federal government. And so they know what's coming in. I agree with Representative Stetkis that probably Commissioner Johnson knows exactly where all the dollars and cents are going with regard to this issue. I think that the working group would be a redundancy, and that everything that Connect Maine was doing in the past is being folded into the Broadband Authority, and it's expanding that authority to consolidate into one place the efforts to bring broadband across the whole entire state. So I think that there is a structure in place. I think they know about the money, that they're working on the money. And secondly, I have a real problem with diverting any revenues coming into the general fund for specific items. I think that we need to, if we're interested in a program, we need to find another source of revenue besides diverting sales taxes. Dr. Allen explained how complicated that is going to be, but I also think that the Wayfair money, the money that came in just as the pandemic was hitting, floated this state for a long time, and we're still seeing the benefit of it. And I would be loath to divert it to anything else.
Senator Pouliot.
Thanks. I just sent you all a really great article from MaineBiz. It was published 2 days ago. Bedford-based high-speed internet provider GWI is teaming up with Arcturus Impact Investors LLC and Fame to build new fiber broadband networks across 5 Maine communities, including Belfast, East Millinocket, Medway, Millinocket, and South Portland. Today, more than ever, equitable access to affordable high-speed internet is crucial to the economic viability of cities and states throughout our community, said the principal from Arcturus. By building fiber-based broadband networks, we're developing infrastructure necessary to lessen the digital divide. So this is already happening, folks. We don't need another government work group to study something that the free market is already solving. I already seconded the motion ought not to pass, and I hope we can just take a vote.
All right, additional committee discussion. Do we know if Peggy Schaefer or somebody else with Connect Me is with us? That we could allow to come in to speak, or do we not have them with us, Representative Terry?
So I believe Peggy is in another meeting at the moment. But I believe that what Representative Hanley, Representative Stekis, and Representative Pouliot is saying is factual, that the Connect Me and the Broadband Authority are already doing all of this work, and including where to fund it from. So I think although I like the idea of making sure that we keep on this, that however we decide to do it, whoever is doing it, that it keeps, the work keeps happening until everybody is connected. I think I'm in support of the current motion.
Yeah, I mean, I wish someone from them was with us to be able to talk about it, because
I think you can.
I just feel like, I'm just wondering if the information is there to know how many homes are going to be connected with the money that we have available from the state and the federal government, how many homes won't be connected, what's that would cost to connect them, and then recommendations on marketplace facilitator funding that would be needed over how many years, what percentage of that would be the right percentage to get people connected by a certain date. I mean, that's sort of tying all that stuff together, looking at the county money, the state and city money that we heard mentioned as well. I feel more comfortable hearing from them that is what's happening to that extent, and without that, it's hard to support a motion to vote down a bill that's about an issue that's so important that we could possibly look at that and do that with a working group. So I don't know if I can support the pending motion myself, but I guess any further committee discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of ought not to pass, please signify. You have all those votes, Lena. We'll wait another minute.
One sec, everybody keeps moving on the screen. Hold on.
Yeah, we'll wait until you got everybody.
I think I have everybody.
All right.
Representative Gremlett, she's gone, so I'll have to.
Well, she's here but not visible. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't. If I don't see her, I can't take her vote.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. All right. All those opposed to the motion? All set, Lena?
Oh, yep.
Okay. And there's a few members that aren't with us that have a certain period of time that they can cast their vote.
Yep.
So the motion carries, ought not to pass. And then all those ought not to pass against the motion, which would be myself and Representative Collins and whoever else may vote after the fact against the motion. For us, I guess I'd like the report to be ought to pass as amended to establish a working group. And I can get some language together outlining what I've described verbally here of what that group would be comprised of. So we have Julie, you've got your hand up.
Yes. In terms of the ought to pass as amended, could you maybe appoint somebody to work with me in coming up with language, or give me a list of things that should be included in the working group, like who the members should be, how it should be staffed, when they should report and to whom they should report, whether they should propose recommended legislation, the usual things that go into these types of working groups. I don't think you've discussed that in detail enough for me to be able to put something together without getting the input from the people who support that report.
Yeah.
And I didn't catch who voted which way. It's going too quickly when you're just raising your hands.
There's Representative Collins and myself and others that may vote afterwards for it. Representative Collins, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would hate to give a whole amount of work for Julie or anyone on this if there isn't much support for it. My whole point was I just wanted to have more time to analyze this before a final vote. I understand what people, almost a consensus of the committee that yes, there's all these people that have been looking at this, doing this. My point was, are we actually going to do something about it? Because we often define a problem, but are we actually going to do what it takes to solve it? So I just wanted to analyze things, and then maybe I probably would have gone along with everyone else, but I just wanted to see what the plan was, if there is one, to come up with these hundreds of millions of dollars. So.
Yeah, and I feel similarly. I mean, if we had heard from Peggy Schaefer or someone from Connect Maine that all the stuff we're all interested in seeing done is already happening, and they're looking at the county and the state, the local money as well as the federal money and all of that stuff. You know, I could probably support not to pass if in fact all of that work is happening. But without hearing from them and having anybody here, it's hard to just vote a bill down that could do some good. So I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of Julie's question, you know, I could work with you, Representative Collings, and the sponsor and Representative McCray on how the working group would be comprised, and in the meantime, maybe connect with Peggy Schaefer and you know, get some of those questions answered. Representative McCray, you have anything for us?
Yes, I just want to thank the committee for very thoughtful and respectful consideration, and I hope things go right to the sky with the internet, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll now close the work session on LD 80, and we'll open up the work session on LD 1067. This is an act to institute a state tax amnesty program to increase general revenue collections. It's sponsored by Senator Baldacci.
I believe with the assistance of Mandy the magician that I should be able to screen share the chart right now. So there it is. Okay.
There we go.
So the next item on your list is LD 1337. Just further down the chart.
We're on 1067.
Oh, you're doing 1067. Oh, okay.
No, that's what we're on right now.
Oh, all right. I guess I'm looking at a different list than you are. Okay. LD 1067 is Representative Baldacci's bill, an act to institute a state tax amnesty program to increase general fund revenue collections. This bill would provide a framework for establishing a tax amnesty period. All the dates in the bill specify 2021. They would need to be changed if you wanted to move forward with this proposal at this point. I think that the bill, Representative Baldacci mentioned that it was, the idea was to, that due to COVID economical issues, that there was a possibility that state revenues might not be sufficient, and that amnesty programs had been used in the past as a way of providing an incentive to get unpaid tax revenues into the state. It would have provided that if a person with a tax delinquency paid their taxes within the amnesty period, that they could do so without incurring a penalty or civil or criminal liability as a result of not having paid on time. Maine Revenue Services indicated last year that they didn't think it was warranted at this time, given that revenues seemed to be either on track or even in excess of what had been estimated, but the committee voted to carry it over. My notes say that the idea was to, in order to do a new evaluation this year as to whether there was a need for the program. I have not heard anything from anyone with regard to this bill this year.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Julie. And yeah, my recollection is we carried the bill over because we didn't know what the economy was going to do, if tourism was going to rebound, sort of where the state would be, and there was a need to do this to generate some revenue for the state, and as it had in the past. Obviously, revenues have been above projections, and we're in a good place with state revenues. I did talk to Senator Baldacci, the sponsor, about this bill, and he said that the last time we did this in 2003, it was done to sort of bridge a gap in the state budget, and it brought in, his recollection was about $30 million in revenue when we did it, and but at this point he doesn't feel that we need the bill in light of the state's finances, and he was fine with us voting ought not to pass, and he said he'd bring the bill forward in the future if it was needed. Go ahead, Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would agree with that. But I would just add, I don't think it's necessary at this time, that there are businesses, well, anyone who's in business who collects sales tax, it is really easy to get behind on those payments if you have a slight downturn or a major downturn in your business. And as we know, a lot of restaurants, there was a lot of support for restaurants and other businesses to keep them afloat, and a lot of them didn't make it. So I'm not necessarily suggesting we need amnesty, but I'm hoping until this whole thing shakes out, the COVID and the economy over the next couple of years, that Maine revenue would show, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just go easy on people who didn't make it, who didn't survive, who may have been they've closed down and they left owing money. Maine revenue can have a heavy hand with collection, and if people haven't got it, they can't pay it. And I just hope that if necessary, we give them tools they may need to extend payment plans or whatever it takes to make it easy on people who have suffered greatly. Thank you.
Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to make a motion ought not to pass.
Okay.
Again,
Second.
Motion made by Representative Terry, ought not to pass, seconded, I believe, by Representative Bickford. Continued committee discussion, Representative Collins.
Yes, thank you. No, I think I was about to say what not Senator Perry, Representative Perry had said. I was going to say something similar, that businesses particularly have been through a lot. So anything we can do to help, encourage them, be lenient. I think that would be wise in these times, that these people, small businesses, have been through a lot, and that I think we should be as fair and open-minded as possible. As you know, some haven't made it, some are still struggling, and we don't know exactly all the twists and turns that are going to come. But I, for one, didn't see a harm in this, and if there was a way we could have gotten tens of millions and encouraged it and worked with businesses rather than penalize them, that's kind of the spirit I support. So I still like the idea.
All right. Committee discussion. I don't see any would like to speak. We do have a motion on the table, and I don't know if you heard Representative Collins, that the sponsor was essentially recommending that we vote ought not to pass in light of the state's finances, but said he'd bring the bill back in the future, maybe next session, if he thought it made sense to do so at that time. But just wanted to let folks know that again. So I guess all those in favor of the pending motion, please signify.
Hold on. There you go. I think it's everybody, isn't it? Yeah.
It can be a unanimous of everybody present.
Yeah.
So that motion carries. So we'll close the work session on LD 1067. And we'll go right into work session on LD 1129. This is an act relating to the valuation of retail sales facilities, sponsored by Representative Matlack.
Thank you very much. This was a bill that was brought before the tax committee in the 129th by Representative Tipping, but it never reached conclusion. I brought it back last session at the beginning of the 1/30th. But I asked that it be postponed, and fortuitously, the Maine Supreme Judicial Court had a decision this past summer with regard to the valuation of real property. And I think it supports the idea that real property should be valued, should not be valued against other properties that are entailed by, excuse me, oh, sorry, by, my apologies. I've been talking about this so long, I can't talk about it anymore. The deed codicils and so forth that restrict the valuation of certain businesses. So I've actually asked that this bill be renamed so that it is not just about retail facilities, in as much as the decision this past summer was with regard to medicine paper. And that I've streamlined the language. So I'm hoping that I avoid the concerns that MRS had about creating a new definition. So what I'm suggesting with this simplified language is that retail facilities, not retail facilities, but assessors be given the tools and the structure to assess property based on its highest and best use, and that they be given a roadmap for use in determining the valuation of this property, including the three ways of valuing, the three manners of valuing property, and that property that is has deed restrictions on it could not be considered comparable. So that is short and sweet what I am proposing.
Okay. Committee discussion, Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Matlack, if the Supreme Court's already ruled on it and assessors obviously should already have the tools, why is it necessary to have a bill at all, is my question.
This bill is in support of local assessors. I think that local assessors are outmatched with when large big buck facilities and other large corporations come and request abatements and try to refute the assessed value. This provides assessors with a way of defending their case so that they are not drawn too deeply into expensive litigation. Currently, most assessors, most abatement requests that reach the court are found in favor of the municipality. However, there are a lot of municipalities that don't have the wherewithal to push back against property owners who have more wherewithal or understanding of how taxation works, so that they are able to push for a tax abatement where one really shouldn't be given. So this provides support to local assessors when they determine valuation.
And if I could follow up, Mr. Chair. So I guess my concern is I do understand. We had one in Auburn with a business that closed, I believe, in December or January, and wanted that year to be considered less value because it wasn't open. But that valuation couldn't happen until April 1st because they had been open during that tax year. So I understand that part, but I also don't understand. I would treat all property the same, and that is, if I have a house that has no windows and no way to support a family, I would not want to see that house taxed on highest and best use, which would be to house a family of 4. So that's why I think if a business, small or large, if it's an empty space, should not be taxed as if it's a full operating profitable space. And for that reason, I'm gonna not support this, and I apologize, but I just can't.
Actually, it's, if I may respond, Senator?
Yes.
Yeah, if you can, I was going to clarify what you're trying to do, but go ahead. You're the sponsor.
Right. It's actually different. It is, for example, here in my area of the world, there was a Walmart in Rockland, and it was your standard Walmart. They chose to move their facility to Thomaston, where they built a big brand new super Walmart, as it was called at the time. So they had that property, and then they retained the other property for a little while, and then they sold it with a lot of deed restrictions, including the size of the businesses that could be housed within that structure when they sold the property. So there are deed restrictions. Now, the owners of Walmart in Thomaston would like the assessors in Thomaston to look at what it's in some respects called a dark store, but a store that is no longer comparable because of the deed restrictions, and say that this is a comparable sale and we need to be valued like that building over there that is not being used to its highest and best use, based on the fact that we have restrictions on it that won't allow it to be at its highest and best use. So this is actually with regard to the comparables from an existing facility to a facility that has deed restrictions on it.
I understand that better. And hasn't the Supreme Court already ruled on this, you said, or similar?
In Madison Paper versus the town of Madison, it wasn't about dark stores per se, but it was in the interpretation of when of comparable properties and being able to use the facility as it exists as of April 1st, like your store was talking about. As of April 1st, the mill in Madison was a going concern, even though they had made noises and said that they would be closing down the mill, liquidating it and so forth, and selling off parts of it, but also salvaging some of the equipment that was in there. That reduced the valuation of the property. But they did that after April 1st. So the value of the property as of April 1st was as a going concern, which it
Right.
was.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie, you've got your hand up.
I just wanted to mention the original bill provided for the new treatment for retail sales facilities. The sponsor's proposed amendment changes that term to improved real property, which seems pretty broad to me, but you have Peter Lacey here, who is the Maine Revenue Services Director of Property Taxes, and he could give you a better idea of what the breadth of that term is in terms of the types of property that it would apply to.
Welcome, Mr. Lacey.
Welcome, Senator Shipman. Thank you very much. So we have looked at the bill. Improved real property is generally going to be anything that's not land. So our concerns is actually kind of the opposite of that, which is the language that's in there, the discussion about three approaches to value and, considering age, condition, things like that. Historically, the law court has not drawn a distinction between improved real property and just property in general. So our one kind of specific concern is that this may kind of throw into question how you would value unimproved real property. Because historically, the court has just said, the three approaches to value apply to property generically. And so adding this language, but limiting it to improved real property kind of opens up for debate how you assess unimproved real property. The other point I think that we would kind of make is that this issue is complex, and it's in a lot of respects a litigation issue. The point that Rep. Matlack made about municipalities not being able to have the time or the wherewithal to go head to head against a Fortune 500 company is not necessarily something that you could solve statutorily, right? Because adding additional language to the statute in some ways may set you back to square one, because now you have new language that hasn't been interpreted by the courts. And so there's arguably new things to argue about now. So we don't have specific concerns about the language other than that one I pointed out about improved real property. But I think we would just point out that it's not clear that there is a silver bullet for this issue. And in area of law like this that has decades of court decisions, it's just unclear how this would be interpreted and what it would actually mean for the process and for the towns. So that's all.
Great, thank you for that. Got a couple hands up. I think Senator Pouliot was next.
Sure. I certainly appreciate the sentiment with this bill. I just have a number of concerns, about its constitutionality, and also determining highest and best use is somewhat subjective. I think that you could argue that a box store that is built, at some point is best used as a box store, but the reality is, in the age of Amazon and changing use of structures, a lot of these box stores are being turned into indoor heated storage facilities. We have a process going on right now in the city of Augusta where there's a Kmart that's been vacant for 1.5 years. And, the only viable market-driven use for that facility, other than hitting it with a wrecking ball, is to look at putting in heated storage in that space. And in other parts of the country, they're coring out the middle of these buildings to create kind of like a central courtyard, and then they're turning them into housing. So I think that just making the assumption that a vacant, former box store, its highest and best use is, another box store is just not a compelling argument to make. And I don't think that, frankly, that this is the right path forward for us. So I'd make a motion of ought not to pass, or if that's been made, I second it.
I don't think
Senator
we have.
Chipman, I've brought an assessor with me who can answer more technical questions about assessing property. Mr. Leichman.
I'll second the motion, by the way.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been ought not to pass and seconded, and we are continuing discussion. And yeah, we have a couple more hands up. You have something else, Senator Pouliot? No, okay. Should we hear from Mr. Leichman first, or do you want to hear from the other folks that wanted to discuss as 2 other people that had their hands up?
Representative Perry, I think we can hear from the other representatives. I just wanted to point out who Mr. Leichman is.
Yeah, so we'll hear from Representative Perry, followed by Representative Carmichael, and then we'll hear from Representative. Go ahead, Representative Perry.
Thank you. I want to get my question in before we heard from the assessor, because he may have some thoughts on it. But all the arguments I'm hearing against, to me, feels like we're using the problem in reverse, that it's the up and going concern big box store that now wants to be assessed as if they're the vacant Kmart that's going to be turned into storage. And so I would be supportive of giving assessors every tool possible, because it's a constant fight. These big boxes, we deal with it in Bangor all the time. It's just a strategy to throw a lot of stuff against the wall and see if anything sticks. Now, if in fact, assessors are trying to take the vacant Kmart used as storage and tax it as if it was still a going concern, then I would agree. But I just feel like that's not the situation. So I'd like to hear some clarity. Thank you.
Representative Carmichael.
Yes, I'd like to just clarify in my own mind so they're asking for abatements on vacant buildings or on buildings they're currently using as well?
They're asking for abatements on buildings they're currently using, and they're wanting to use other properties that are vacant that have deed restrictions in some cases that the same owner has put into those deed restrictions when they sold it as a comparable measurement in terms of what the new property should be valued at.
So,
That's
yeah,
something, but
I think it's important that we protect communities from undue cost. You know, being able to go to court against you know, a big company like that is going to strain a community a lot more than it's going to strain that company.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So we have an assessor with us, Mr. Lickman, I guess, if you'd like to.
Lickman.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you about this. The main point is the expense to a community when these spurious abatement claims are brought. Not everybody can fight them. You have to knit together arguments out of case law, the statute, and appraisal textbooks to make an argument against. And that takes a lot of lawyering. Cases cost towns an awful lot of money on claims that are not justified in how it goes. Senator Puglia talked about the highest and best use. If a big box is no longer able to function as a retail, you know, it's now empty or it needs to change because that business is not doing well, and it changes into a warehouse or something else, the highest and best use changes. It's the market that dictates what is the highest and best use. So if this Kmart is a good example, because a lot of those aren't around anymore. If that building still exists, and it can exist as a retail store, but it can as a warehouse, that highest and best use will change. The assessment is not going to insist that it stay retail. So once again, that's market driven. But we have statutes that talk about April 1st, and that we assess a property for its condition and its ownership as of April 1st. We don't have anything in statute that talks about comparable sales. And I want to, when this was first brought up a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Representative Bickford outside the committee room, and you said to me that you had trouble supporting this because of the retail, that was singling out retail. And I thought about that a lot over time, and you were right. There was no need to single out retail because we assess all properties exactly the same, whether it's a ranch house, a big box store, or a shopping mall. They all get the same treatment under the law, and so there was no need to really, when I thought about it, to specify retail. What we needed to do, though, was have another weapon in our arsenal to say you just cannot take a thriving store, a retail store that's doing well, that was built to do what it's doing and is still operating, and then tell me that the value of that should be the same as a store that failed or a store that's old and no longer functional. But that's what's going on. These claims are coming in, and the appraisals are listing distressed stores, empty stores. And if we as assessors had something in statute that we could point to and say they can't do this, we wouldn't have to pull together all this case law and all these pages from textbooks and everything else to make a case, which, as I said before, is just a lot of lawyering that should be unnecessary. So that's what's behind this law. Or this amendment to 701A is just to state what we already do, but put it into statute rather than common practice. So take any questions.
If you could just introduce yourself, because we didn't do that at the beginning, like where.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. My name is Kerry Leishman, and I'm the assessor for the towns of Camden and Rockport.
Great, thank you so much. Representative Stackis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. trying to get this through my head. The amendment, it sounds as if the amendment greatly changes the bill. And if what I heard from Mr. Leichtman just a minute ago, this is going to apply to all properties, not just retail?
If you want to
Yes,
answer that.
exactly right. Exactly right.
So I have a major concern with that. Last year, there was a public hearing on this bill, LD 1129, giving the opportunity for, you know, anybody that might be affected or anybody in general to testify for or against this bill. By changing this bill, we have now just added more people who may be caught up in either, you know, some sort of, you know, negative unintended consequence, and we're not going to be able to hear from those people. I think as much as this bill has been changed, this thing ought to have another public hearing with the main people knowing that this could affect them and allow them an opportunity to speak.
Yeah,
I would recommend that you know, ought not to pass on this bill.
So Representative Stetkes, just to, if I heard you right, if we had another public hearing on the bill with the amendment, then it's something you might support?
I always support the right of the people to speak to their government and let them know what either intended or unintended consequences might come from something like this.
So if you wanted another public hearing, we'd have to vote down the pending motion and have someone make a motion to have another public hearing, just in terms of how the process would work, I guess. Although we've never done that in this committee, but I guess it's an option to have another public hearing for folks that might want to weigh in on the amendment. Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my big concerns with this, and I think it's been brought up, is companies as well as individuals all have the right to appeal. If you take that right to appeal away, you're taking away the whole foundation of our justice system and our rights. I'm not sure that this is proper. And I will say this morning, we've turned work sessions into public hearings already.
Representative Bickford, I don't believe that this takes away the right of anybody to appeal. I think it puts in statute what, as we heard from the assessor, that's already being done, and then whatever value they come up with can still always be appealed. I think, is that correct, Mr. Lichtman? I mean, but still, an appeal could still occur, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. This does not take away any right of appeal. Doesn't at all.
So being put through as a bill, are we just reaffirming what the courts have already said? And why do we need to do that? Is it redundant?
May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not redundant in statute by any means. It's missing from statute. It would save municipalities a lot of money in court proceedings if it was a much more simple matter for, you know, people to point at something in statute and say, you know, bring your abatement, but let's have a reasonable discussion. You can't be comparing thriving stores to vacant, unused stores, and that's basically what is being said here. It's outlining that a comparable has to be comparable. Most of these cases lose in court when the argument is made because of the lack of comparables. But to get there, you've spent tens of thousands of dollars, and that's
But if
difficult.
so I guess my question is, if there's already a case studies, if this has already been heard in the past and failed, shouldn't this be almost a cookie cutter approach by the municipalities to say, hey, this is easy. I mean, we've already got the data, we've already got the rulings in the past. Let's use that as our defense, and it should be pretty basic, I would think.
Representative
And I'll
Bickford,
close with that.
I think what we're trying to do here, someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, is to put it in statute so that less court cases are brought, because the folks that would bring the court case would say, well, geez, we're probably not going to prevail. The statute's pretty clear. So it sort of clarifies current practice by putting that in statute, which will then prevent future litigation and save our municipalities money with future litigation. I mean, I think that is essentially what we're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm gonna support what Representative Stetka said, and that is, I'd like to see us vote this down and then refer it back to the committee as another public hearing to start over.
So you would support voting down the current motion and making a motion for another public hearing?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table of ought not to pass. We'd have to vote that down first. If we wanted to do that, Representative Terry, I believe you're next.
Sure. So I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Leichman said about, that one court case needing the backup of statute at this point. Just to kind of put it in perspective, there's a backlog of this work that's waiting to be heard by the property tax review board, and excuse me, the municipalities having to spend all of this money on litigation, and the municipalities having to hold off on collection of these property taxes are making it really difficult for our municipalities to do their budget. So that's a big thing for me. I know my town manager here, when he's got things that are up in the air, if there's something that we can help him with on the state level that will get their budget done on time. I mean, we all know what that's like, having to wait until the last minute to get your budgets done. I think having this in statute will make it so it's considerably easier for the municipalities to do the work that they need to do to keep things on track, rather than waiting for all of these reports to come back that are literally, they're sitting on a docket someplace right now waiting to be heard, and all of these towns are just waiting for a decision to be made. Whereas if we had it in statute, it would be considerably easier for them to do that work.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of leaning towards supporting this, but I agree with Representative Stetkis that this should probably go back to, the public hearing, and I'd support going that direction with it.
So let me ask you about that, Representative Matlock, and we've heard from, 3 members now that would like another public hearing, and one said they're leaning towards supporting it, would like another public hearing. Do you think we should have another public hearing, or do you think that that's not necessary? You're the sponsor of the bill. I don't know.
I had been hoping that we would have another public hearing when this bill came up, but I understand that was turned down. So the reason we are here as we are is because we weren't allowed to have a second public hearing.
So that was Representative Terry. Was that turned down by leadership? I mean, I don't believe I wasn't asked about that. I don't know if that's an option we have as chairs or.
No, I believe it's the presiding officers at this point. I still am not 100% clear as to why we would need another public hearing, considering this is now the second time around with this, and interested parties have been keeping up with it. We've seen everybody. I've seen everybody on this panel several times. That's just my opinion. I feel like the work has been being done over the course of time for quite a while. But yeah, I think Julie may know best whether or not that's something that we as a committee can do, or if the presiding officers still need to approve something like that.
Do you know, Julie, if that's, we've never had that question come up as long as I've been chair of the committee. Can the chairs just schedule another public hearing on a bill, since it's an amendment that changes the bill quite a bit, or is that something we don't have the option to do?
I'm afraid I don't know either. I would need to check.
Okay. I'm hearing from Representative Terry that she doesn't know that it's necessary, and there's some other members that would like that, and the sponsor, I guess would support that, it seemed like. But Representative Perry, go ahead, Representative Matlock. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
the only thing I could suggest is having another workshop where interested parties are invited to attend.
Yeah.
Uh, that could be a suggestion.
Yeah.
I know that Mr. Picard is here.
Yeah.
And also Mr. Leichman and also David Martucci is also the assessor from Thomaston. They're here to discuss this along with Mr. Lacy. So we do have some folks here, but if you wanted to have another workshop and invite more people, that might be an option.
That was one thought that came to mind. If we can't have another public hearing, to have a work session where we let everybody know that anybody that would like to weigh in will be invited to weigh in at the work session and share their thoughts with us or something. That might be one option for us. Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I raised my hand before this latest discussion because I'm ready to vote against this motion and vote in support. My 3 years on the Bangor City Council, every year we had these giant abatement requests that, if successful, would have wiped out all the natural growth and property values from increasing prices to new value that was built during the course of the year. And it was a constant battle. It's, unique to the more service center areas. Our assessor in the council itself wasted, I don't know how much money and time on it. And all it threatened to do is shift. I mean, that growth is what keeps our mill rate down. So it just threatened to shift all the cost onto every homeowner and every business on their property taxes. And I don't see who else could be affected that was left out. We amend bills all the time. We have passed bills a number of times to straighten out what a court had suggested. None of this is unusual. The only testimony I've heard today that gives me any concern was from Maine Revenue, from Mr. Lacy, that by changing the language, maybe it starts some court stuff over again. That's the only concern I heard. I'm forgetting one other thing, but I guess that's enough. So I'm ready to go on this. Thank you.
Representative Stutkis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding on this isn't just different. This is substantively different. That could very well affect many thousands of Mainers. And there's a huge difference between inviting some interested parties to attend and the statutory requirements to get the word out to anybody paying attention to come and testify. My comments weren't necessarily to request another public hearing. I just think this bill has been changed so much that it needs another hearing. And that could easily be done in a handful of months in the beginning of the next session, and allow everybody that's going to be affected by this to have a voice. Outside of that, this is not a good way of governance by any means.
Representative Bickford. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Representative Matlack, do we have the amended language? Has that been written?
Yes, sir. I handed it to Julie on Monday and she passed it around to everybody on Tuesday.
Passed it around, you mean emailed it?
Emailed it to everybody, yep.
I do have it
Okay.
available to share if you would like me to.
That would be good if it's all right with the chair.
Yeah, that would be fine. And Representative Matlack, Mr. Lacy had brought up a concern about something, the way something was defined. I don't remember the exact detail on it, but do you think there's maybe need to work with him on that, or maybe work with him to further clarify what he was asking for? So that's.
Well, my question with regard to that is earlier in section 701A, it talks about establishing valuation of unimproved acreage. So this and that was the only language that was in the statute at that time. But now with the addition of my language, it's also for the purpose of establishing the valuation of improved real property.
No, it's going to close
It was just unimproved acreage before, and now it's improved real property.
Mr. Lacy, is that clear up what you had raised, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To a certain extent, I mean, the issue is that the bill is codifying, as Rep. Mal explained, codifying what the court's already said, and the court hasn't limited it to improved real property. So it's not necessarily an issue. It's just, it raises the question about does now the highest and best use, does now the three approaches only apply to improved real property where the court has not drawn that line before. So it's not necessarily a problem. It just raises questions that I can't answer, that nobody can answer until one of these cases goes to court. I think that's the biggest thing, is it runs the potential of muddying the waters. That's all. Doesn't necessarily do that. Again, there's not specific issues that I can point out with the bill. It just unintended consequences in an area where, as they've said, the municipalities have been winning historically. It just takes a while to get there. And so when you add new language, you don't know what a court's going to do. You don't know how it's going to be interpreted. This could be the solution. This could cut things off of the past. It could also, as I said, just create new things to argue about. And that's the concern that we only wanted to point out. It's not a specific issue with the bill. It's just, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. That's all.
Can you think of a way to change some of the language so that it avoids that?
I don't know. We'd have to, I'd have to sit down with our policy folks and figure out the options. I don't know that I wouldn't have a suggestion today, but we could, certainly look at it.
Yeah. I mean, we would, yeah. I mean, there'd be other opportunities to do that if we did act on the bill today, I guess, through language review and also through potentially an amendment on the floor if we thought it was necessary. But I just kind of throw that out there. I want to make sure that if we go forward with something, it's as clean as it can be and that your concerns have been addressed. Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lacy, just real quick. So as you see it, if we were to pass this bill, there would likely or possibly be litigation in regards to it. But after that, the statute would be, or the interpretation would be pretty solid as compared to what we're dealing with at the moment, which is multiple municipalities having this problem and having no solution at all. So one Supreme Court judge could vote one way and another in another way at this point and make it even more difficult.
Well, I mean, once something goes to the law court, it's in theory final, right? But as an attorney myself, I mean, there's always novel ways to look at things, right? So I just, I don't know that I can necessarily answer that question in a clear way, but as I said before, it's the whole dark store issue is partly, yes, there's nothing in statute, but it's also, like I said, it's a litigation issue. And so it's hard to, absent saying flat out, you can't appeal this, which obviously has its own, as Rep. Bickford pointed out, has its own issues. It's kind of hard to prevent somebody from making an argument in court and appealing these and fighting them for a number of years, which is what is happening now. So that's the only concern that we want to raise, is that I just want to be clear that it's not clear that this is a silver bullet that's going to solve the issue. That's all. Doesn't mean it's not going to help the issue, but
right,
it's not necessarily going to solve it completely. So
I understand. Oh, there will always be appeals. End of story. There's no way around that. I think we've seen that in multiple ways. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Representative Collins.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention that I think if we can make good policy that helps assessors, which really directly is helping communities, I think that's what we got to focus on. And I think that's the heart of this issue. I don't know if a public hearing is going to change that, or other property owners and the type or class of property they have are the concern here. So I think that what we need to do is focus on the intent of this bill and the problem we're trying to solve. And with all due respect about potential lawsuits by corporations that have, in many cases, received incentives and many benefits from Maine communities in the state to come here. Once they decide they don't want to do that type of business here, and they want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get millions of dollars of decrease taxes over years, I mean, they may try to have frivolous court cases, but we just need to focus on making good policy and know that, you know, those companies may always try to bring up frivolous court cases. But I think in this case, I think it's clear that this can help assessors, it can help communities stop this tactic. And if people still want to bring up lawsuits, I mean, we can't stop that. So I believe what Representative Perry said from his perspective, serving on a local, you know, city council, and what others have said is that this is an issue. It happens all the time. It's harmful to our communities. And I think we need to help the communities as much as we can. So I think it would be the right thing to do to support this bill as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Collins. And that brings up a question I just wanted to ask Representative Matlack, if you could clarify that I believe that the Maine Municipal Association is in support of the amendment that you've brought forward.
I did not reach out to Maine Municipal Association with regard to this. I work with assessors on this, and they are the ones directly affected by this.
Yeah.
So they were the folks I dealt with.
Okay, and they're all on board with it?
Yes.
Okay, Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listening to Mr. Lacy and knowing that we do have the amendment before us, it's not something that has to be written, then I'm going to stick with my motion, but I'm not going to put a motion out for a new public hearing or to table and rework this. I think that we've had all the information we need. We can all make adult decisions here, and I think that's what we need to do.
Great. Thank you for that. So there's no more hands up. So seeing that there doesn't seem to be any interest in further discussion, we have a motion on the table of ought not to pass. All those in favor of that motion, please signify. This is ought not to pass. Yep. We'll wait for Lena to get the votes recorded. Let us know when you're ready, Lena.
I believe I got it. Thank you.
And all those opposed to the motion, please signify. Got everybody recorded?
1 second. It's almost done. And all right, thank you.
All right, so that motion fails. So we're still deliberating this bill with the amendment. Representative Terry.
I'd like to make a motion ought to pass as amended by the language that we saw today.
I'd like to second that.
We have a motion by Representative Terry ought to pass as amended with the amendment that Representative Matlack has offered today, and that's seconded by Representative Gramlich. Any additional committee discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Let us know when you got everybody, Lena.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those opposed, please signify.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll now close the work session on LD 1129 and we'll open up the work.
Hold
session.
on. Sorry. And the minority report is
1 second.
ought not to pass.
Not to pass.
Yes, ought not to pass.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll now open up the work session on LD 1289. This is an act to cut property taxes for Maine residential homeowners, sponsored by Representative Perry. We'll let Julie walk us through the chart on this and then we'll hear from the
Yeah,
sponsor.
I'm going to apologize for my screen sharing problems, but I seem to be having a lot of problems that even my magician was unable to find the solution for. When I had previously tried to share the proposed committee amendment on the previous bill, everything except your picture sort of went. I no longer had the ability to raise my hand. I no longer had the ability to screen share. I didn't have any of the boxes available to do that. While you were talking, it just sort of on its own all seemed to reestablish itself. So I now have the button that says screen share that should permit me to do this. So I'm going to try to screen share the chart.
All right.
But I'm not going to guarantee that it'll work. So I just want to tell you that my computer is having these problems. It's not just me at this point.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to try to share.
Just a reminder too, that everybody received the bill chart and the amendments in an email from Julie yesterday at around 4 o'clock. So if you
It
want
looks
to.
like it's working, Julie. Yeah, we can see it.
You can see it. All right.
Yeah, you want to scroll down because we've already dealt with the bill in front of us on the screen, but we're now on LD 1289.
Yeah, trying to get it a little bit bigger here. 1289.
And we can see it now. It's just
Is that working for you? Okay.
You can see it. We just need to get to the 1289.
Oh, it's
We're
not showing
currently-
12.
Well,
Is it
we're
showing
looking
12?
at it's 1067 right now, and at the bottom it says 1129.
Is it moving at all right now?
No,
Yeah, I'm moving it on my screen here and it's not moving for you.
no.
I think I'd be best if I just explain. It doesn't seem to be, I seem to be having problems. I don't know what they are.
All right. Well, that's fine if you want to take this off since we're not on this bill anymore, and we can just discuss 1289.
Screen sharing is paused.
I think I can get rid of it for you, Julie. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
LD 1289 is Representative Perry's bill. It's an act to cut property taxes for residential homeowners. It has two parts to it. One would establish a new income tax rate of 7.95%. The way it's drafted, because it was last year's bill, for tax years beginning on or after January 1st, 2022. And the new 7.95% would kick in for income over $300,000 for individuals, $450,000 for heads of household, and $600,000 for married joint returns. The bill also proposes to increase the homestead property tax exemption, currently at $25,000 in 2021. The bill provides for an increase to $35,000 in 2022, $45,000 in 2023, and $55,000 in 2024. If you want to move forward, I think you probably ought to consider whether you need to move those dates 1 year forward as well.
Okay. Representative Perry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a feeling there might not be a need for a long public or work session here. So I thought maybe a quick overview from Julie would be enough. So I did not author this bill. My senator did, and then was advised with that tax increase, he probably couldn't be the sponsor. So I don't know if Senator Baldacci is in the queue today or not.
You don't see him.
Yeah, I think the homestead exemption is one of the most important things we have done for property taxpayers, and we've made some substantial improvements. You all tend to disagree with me that ought to be half funded and we should be doing more, but all right, I'll move on and forget about that. But with the revenue situation we have right now, I think we have opportunity to do more with the homestead exemption, should we choose to, and that maybe this isn't the right time for this bill and the income tax changes it makes. That's the sponsor, my senator may disagree, but you know, it was a much different time when this bill was written than we have today.
Great, thank you for that, Representative Perry. Representative Bickford, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This income tax provision is a giant step backwards for us, and I'm going to make a motion ought not to pass.
Motion ought not to pass made by Representative Bickford.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Carmichael. Committee discussion.
Third.
Go ahead, Senator Pouliot.
I just third the motion.
Seeing no committee discussion, all those in favor, please signify.
All right, that's everybody. Thank you.
It's unanimous of all members present. We'll close
Yeah.
the work session on LD 1289, and we will open up the work session on LD 1337. This is an act to increase affordable housing and reduce property taxes through an impact fee on vacant residences. This is sponsored by Representative Kessler, who I believe is with us and has an amendment to the bill. So we're bringing in Representative Kessler. Are you with us?
I don't see.
I have beamed up.
Yep, there you hear.
Oh, there you are.
We're on your bill, LD 1337, and I believe that you have an amendment that you wanted to offer to us as we deliberate on this bill.
Senator,
Yep, go ahead.
can we have Julie read the analysis first?
Yeah, Julie, do you want to go through the analysis? I know there's some issues with sharing on the screen, but if you want to just discuss that with us, I guess.
Sure. I don't think I'm going to be able to screen share. I shouldn't attempt it again. The original bill would have created a residential vacancy impact fee for vacant residential property, for certain vacant residential property. It would be a state level fee that would be administered and collected by Maine Revenue Services. It had many of the characteristics of a tax, and at least last year raised the question as to whether or not this was a tax, because the fee would have been 0.5% of the equalized value of the residential property, and taxes which are based upon the value of property are usually considered to be property taxes. And the revenue would have gone 50% to the home fund for affordable housing activities, and 50% to the local government fund to reimburse municipalities for the homestead property tax exemption. Representative Kessler's amendment, I believe, is replacing the entire structure of the original bill, and instead substituting authority for municipalities to adopt a residential vacancy impact fee on the local level. It would be up to them to draw the line between whether it was appropriately a tax or a fee. There are all kinds of constitutional issues with regard to the legislature giving municipalities the ability to adopt taxes. This is not intended to be a tax, it's intended to be a fee. They can adopt all the fees they want. There's no constitutional problem with that as long as it's actually a fee. And the amendment would provide that the fees collected by a municipality must be used to increase the availability or improve the affordability of year-round residential property within the municipality. And I'll turn it over to you all and Representative Kessler.
Great, thank you for that, Julie. Representative Kessler, if you'd like to discuss your amendment with us, we're happy to hear from you.
Thank you. Glad to be back in taxation. Basically, I can sum it up this way. I spoke with every possible stakeholder that I could and received as much feedback as I could about this bill. And I concede that the bill in its original form was just not ready for prime time. It was not ready for statewide implementation, and it did not have the full support of colleagues within my own party. So I went back to the drawing board to really try to address the issue where, in the circumstance where cities like Portland and South Portland have been very much interested in creating policies like this at the municipal level, there's been a lack of clarification in the law as to whether it was safe and constitutional for them to do so. And when I was meeting with the Attorney General's office about this bill, this is actually a result of that meeting with the AG's office, where they had corrected me to the section in Title 30A that already deals with a municipality's home rule authority to implement fees for specific purposes. This fits within that framework. And as it comes or pertains to the constitutionality of such a concept, that's why in this amended version of the bill, it states specifically that those revenues need to go back to that specific purpose. Because if it was to go to, fill the general budget of the town, that could very well be unconstitutional. So it puts it in a very specific frame to avoid the constitutionality issues. And admittedly, it's not necessarily the best fit for, say, a town near a ski resort as it is to a town like Portland or South Portland. The housing situations, even though affordable housing and accessibility to housing is great, the need is great throughout the state, each town has their own unique challenges around that. And so this does not require any town to do such a thing, but it makes it clear to those towns' corporation councils, you can clearly do this. So in summary, that's what this new version of the bill is before you now. So.
Great, thank you for that, Representative Kessler. So clarifying, it's a local option fee essentially with the amendment. And if you talk to the Maine Municipal Association, are they supportive?
Yeah, so this amended version of the bill did go before the policy committee. I did send the committee a email that was a communication that I had with MMA, and they did support this amended version of the bill.
Great. We have some questions from committee members. We have Senator Pouliot. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In a moment, I actually have to make a transition to mobile. So if you guys see me kind of go dark that way, no pun intended, Representative Matlack, then that's what's going on. But anyway, well, first of all, I vote ought not to pass.
We're not voting right now, but do you have any?
I made a motion and Representative Clifford tried to second it, but he was on silent. Thank you.
Yeah, seconded.
Motion about not to pass. It's been seconded. Additional committee discussion. Representative Bickford.
So I wasn't done. I mean, a tax, a fee, call it what you want. This is a tax. It's unnecessary. We're marching on $1 billion surplus. What we should do is jack up the reimbursement on the homestead exemption and send more money back to municipalities that way. Thank you.
Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are many other ways to encourage growth in housing. I have a bill myself before Labor and Housing in a couple of weeks, and there's a lot of ways you can do it without having taxes or impact fees or call it whatever you want. You don't penalize into prosperity. And that's why I seconded that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bickford. Additional committee discussion. And I'll say I'm not going to be supporting the current motion because I do want to support the work Representative Kessler has done on this, particularly with the amendment, making it a local option. I think makes sense. And in the district I represent, we've had a proliferation of apartments that have been turned into short-term rental units, which are much more profitable for the owners, but we've lost literally hundreds of units of rental housing. Maybe even in excess of 1,000 units of rental housing that we've lost to short-term rentals. And while the owner of the property is able to make more money with it by doing that, I think that they should be able to be assessed a fee by the city, should the city choose to do so, to generate some funding for affordable housing to replace the units of rental housing that have been lost in a place like this. So I do support the direction trying to go with this, and we'll be opposing the motion and hope to support a motion about to pass as amended. We have some hands up from Representative Stetkis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, playing catch up. So I had between last night and this morning read through the testimonies on this hearing, and one of the things that came up time and time again from the proponents of this bill was the idea of fairness and equity. Now, looking at the amendment, I have to wonder if that support would remain, because, in my local area, and again, so waterfront properties or that sort of thing, our waterfront properties are nothing like Sebago or Fry Island in my neck of the woods by any means. They're mostly, small camps that are passed down from generation to generation. And in a lot of cases, those things aren't even accessible year round. So they could be caught up on this. But getting back to the fairness and equity piece of the story, and with this amendment, so you could literally have properties like the Bush compound or John Travolta's $5 million mansion on Islesboro. If those towns choose not to opt into this, they don't pay this tax, right? These multi-millionaires that I know a lot of people are, hold up on this, whatever you want to call it. This, I don't want to, anyway, I want to go there. While at the same time, the school teacher and the nurse that lives in the neighboring town that does opt in on this could get caught up in this tax. So I don't understand how this could be fair or equitable when, our local neighbors that, happen to be over the threshold of income, have to look at the multimillionaires in the neighboring town that don't pay the tax that they have to. So I'd have to wonder, is this fair and equitable under this form?
May I answer the question, Mr. Chair?
Kessler, go ahead.
Thank you for your concern, Representative Stetkis. I think that it sounds to me like the amended version of the bill is not really what you're talking about. So when it comes to who gets or who would be subject to such a thing, that's up to the municipalities themselves to decide if they decide they want to go there. So in communities around where you live, if they determine that that's not in the best interest of their community, then they don't need to pursue that. when it comes to income limitations or all of the special exemptions that were in the original version of the bill, all of that's gone because it really needs to be, left up to the town or city to determine those terms for themselves. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you have anything else to follow up, Representative Checkis? We have other people that want to speak.
Yeah, if I could, and again, I'm playing catch up, and I think I think I actually do understand the bill and the amendment. So what I'm saying is, if the municipality of Islesboro chooses not to opt in on this new tax, but the municipality of Lincolnville, a neighboring town, does opt in on the tax, and now that the income thresholds are removed, you could literally have a retired couple that hate the snow and want to go to Florida part of the year or Arizona that are going to pay this essentially a wealth tax on a second home when they can just look across the border to their neighboring town to a multi-millionaire that doesn't pay the tax. I have to wonder, is that fair and equitable that the proponents of this bill thought they were getting now that it's changed so much?
Representative Matlack.
Representative Gramlich is ahead of me, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Representative Matlack. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just want to say I'm really heartened to hear reception from members of this committee that their eagerness to address the housing crisis that we have here in the state of Maine. I'd love to have a conversation further about that. But more pointedly to this bill and its amendment, and to Representative Stetkes' point, Representative Kessler, are you able to elaborate on Mike? I know you sent the letter from MMA, but I'm curious if you're able to just kind of in a nutshell elaborate, what MMA has said relative to this amendment, and then more pointedly, in terms of proponents, if you've had additional conversation with proponents relative to this amendment.
Thank you for the question, Representative Gramlich. So I'm only able to, I can't speak for Maine Municipal, but in terms of the communications that we have had, the original concern was about the administration of such a thing, and that not all towns would necessarily be on board with that additional administrative tasks, and or even want to like opt into it. So going this route lets municipalities choose whether or not they want to participate, and that was what was appealing to the policy committee. As it comes to the proponents of the bill and the amended version of the bill, some of the really more hardcore proponents of the bill think that this is a watered down version and they're not happy with it. So I'm sorry, but that's the legislative process, and the political reality is that the original bill is not going to fly. So wanted to try to still maintain the fundamental spirit of the bill and provide that additional flexibility as it pertains to, once again, as I had referred to before, municipalities already want to take action in this regard. And when there has been a complete lack of regulation in the real estate industry, we're seeing what's happening with that. We are seeing prices soar. There is no control over the market. And so proponents, including myself, firmly believe that this is a necessary regulatory tool that municipalities can implement to get units on the market to increase supply, and also to create a source of revenue that is going to help keep people in the community and stay there. So that's, hope that answers your questions.
Thank you very much.
Additional questions from Representative Matlock and Representative Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just want to make a comment. I was originally not interested as much in this bill as others may have been. It was something that was in chatting with some of my communities was not going to fly very well, but by making it into a fee that is at the discretion of the individual municipality, I believe that, as MMA has come to agree, that this is an opportunity for municipalities who are hard hit by housing issues, by loss of regular rental units, loss of homes to homes for families, lost to leasing opportunities. I believe that allowing the municipalities to decide for themselves what is in their best interest is the best way to handle this issue.
Representative Terry, followed by Senator Pouliot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Kessler, I apologize. I have lost my link to the amendment. I just wanted to check with you about how municipalities go about deciding whether or not they're going to impose this this fee. Is it by referendum? Is it at the town manager's discretion? Is it at the town council's discretion? Is there language in the amendment that helps municipalities determine whether how they're going to make this happen?
No, and it would happen under the normal, ordinance creating process in the municipality. So just as they would pass any other ordinance in their town. So.
Okay, so can we put that in the language? Can we make sure that that's in the language, in the amended language? Julie, is that a possibility to do that, to make sure that it's determined by ordinance and not just at the whim of the town manager?
The language as drafted, and I won't try to pull it up for you, although I had prepared to be able to do so. But it says a municipality may enact an ordinance imposing a fee on vacant residential property. So they would have to go through whatever process applies in that municipality to adopt an ordinance.
Okay, that's terrific.
That's already in the language.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I can't find it either. I'm having electricity issues today.
Oh dear.
Go ahead, Representative Senator Pouliot.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm not on video, just on the move here. So we just spent last summer and fall working, I think in a great fashion, to put together recommendations for increasing access to housing in our state. And none of those recommendations in the report of the committee chaired by Senator Hickman and Speaker Fecteau included a new tax on Airbnb, type properties. So I just, we spent a considerable amount of time looking at ways to move the needle on housing, and that's not one of the recommendations. So I just don't see this as the best path for us to increase housing options for Maine people, nor do the folks who were involved in making recommendations for increasing housing. The reality is that, nationally right now we have about 2 months worth of inventory, two and a half months worth of inventory. There's more realtors right now than there are houses on the market in this country. And the problem is being driven really by the lack of inventory that we have and the costs associated with creating that inventory. So this is nothing more than a feel-good piece of legislation. I hate to say it, folks, but it's really not going to move the needle. I think it's something that we can rattle and say, hey, look, we did this. It's going to bring more units on. But the reality is you might get like 24 units out of this. And we need tens of thousands. So I just, I don't see the need for this legislation. It's the reason I voted on it to pass, but I think that we should be mindful of the work that was done by the committee to address this crisis that we have. This is not one of the recommendations.
Great. And see, Representative Kessler, do you have a response to any of the issues that have been raised recently?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just to speak to Senator Pouliot's criticism of the bill as it pertains to the housing study that was completed. You'll see in the housing study report that they did wish to focus on issues such as short-term rentals, and they did specify that it is an area of concern and that it definitely needs further exploration. But the group focused primarily on zoning issues, and so that's why you didn't see any recommendations about short-term rentals in that housing report. I think that you'll see once this hits the House chamber, where the votes will go from those people on those committees. It's hard to say with any certainty if it's going to help a couple dozen or not be effective at all, because really it depends on how those municipalities will set that up, how high of a fee they would set. And to your point that there's more realtors than there is units, that's exactly the point of this bill, is to get more units on the market. And we're talking more rental units. We're not talking about home sales. We're talking about meeting the needs in particular for renter households. And nobody can predict with certainty what any town will do with this. So, but it's certainly a tool in the toolbox. So,
Representative Bickford, followed by Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. No, still good morning, Representative Kessler. If you look at the impact fee that you're recommending, in some municipalities, that is 25% of the property taxes that they currently pay. And in other municipalities, especially in rural Maine, it's upwards of 35% of their property taxes. So if someone spends $3,000 on property taxes and they have a mill rate of 15, then they're paying $1,000 extra dollars. I mean, that is a lot of dollars. If they have a mill rate of 20, they're paying 25%. So if they pay $4,000 in property taxes, they're going to pay $1,000 impact fee. Where's that money going? How is it going to increase? That's my biggest question. How is this going to increase housing stock or rental units? All it is a fee. And if they pay the fee, then it doesn't help anybody. I think the best way to go is to go through housing and labor and deal with the zoning issues that we have throughout the state. If you have a piece of property of 10 or 15 acres and you cannot farm that land, you can't hay it, you can't do tree growth, why is it in ag land? Why isn't it in another zoning? Why can't you build a house there? Many municipalities want you to provide a certain percentage of your income if you build a house on that property. So Maine is a total open space state. That's where we need to go. We don't need impact fees, or we don't need to figure out how we can get more money out of people, how we can squeeze that orange even more. What we have to do is open the state up for growth. And that's how the state grows. Sorry, I had to get on my soapbox, Representative Kessler, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have a
May
response?
answer the comment question. I appreciate the sneak preview of your bill in labor and housing. So to answer your question about how this is going to help increase availability, if they pay that fee. So the point is not just to increase the quantity of units available in a town, but it's also to keep housing more affordable for the people that live there. So all of those revenues specifically have to go towards housing affordability. So that could include, the building of more housing through a local housing authority, or it could also include property tax relief for people on fixed incomes. The purpose is to keep housing more affordable there, but also, for example, in other jurisdictions where this is already used, like the city of Oakland, California, they charge between $3,000 and $6,000 if the unit is vacant. So that's enough as a homeowner for me to say, okay, do I really want to do this? Or if I put this on the market as a rental unit and get income, what's it worth to me? So, and that is a mechanism to get units on the market. So
Thank you.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And the last thing I want to see is Maine be the new California. So I appreciate your comments.
Representative Sachs, followed by Representative Perry.
Thank you so much. Representative Kessler, I just wanted to clarify. So all of the exemptions, for example, that were in the previous bill, all of those are eliminated in terms of having municipalities craft, if they wish to avail themselves of this Title 30 provision, to avail themselves of this particular tool, then they can craft their own. So it could be for homes over $1 million, for example, which I think was in one of the versions of the bill, for example.
That was actually, you may be thinking about the real estate transfer tax. It's all kinds of numbers flying here. Right. So to answer your question, yes, all of those are removed, but it maintains the very specific definitions around, excuse me here while I.
Right. So this one had things like seasonality.
So specifically defines what a residential property is, what a permanent resident is, which refers to the homestead exemption law, and defines what vacant is. Any other parameters is up to the town. So
okay, thanks. And so the reason I was clarifying that was I think this committee has done a really good job at supporting municipalities in doing those solutions. We've had a lot of municipalities come before us in this bill that provided testimony as to how it would be helpful. That testimony I don't think would change dramatically with this amendment. I'm uncertain, for example, that my community would support it, but just as I did with other pieces of legislation, it's really up to a municipality. I'm so appreciative of the work, not only of the Housing Commission, but the work we've done in this committee around Senator Deschambault's bill around expanding the TIF for affordable housing, Victoria Morales' bill 1132 for expediting renovating housing. I see this as another tool if municipalities wish to avail themselves of that. I have no problem with that, particularly if it's targeted. One argument I will say that I've heard is we have so much money for affordable housing right now. And that really doesn't speak to a municipality's ability to access those funds and to apply them for projects that they wish they could do their own. So if they use these wonderful recommendations from the Housing Commission, for example, to fix zoning issues and encourage development, they still will need those funds to be able to do so. So again, I appreciate the amendments, the discussion around this. And for me, I was not, as you know, a super fan of the first bill. So I appreciate the work that you've been doing on it since then. Thanks.
Go ahead, Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to augment one thing the sponsor said when he said he reached out to every interested party. I would like to mention he reached out to every interested party several times. So your work on this has certainly been noted. I could settle on the arguments of anything I've heard today for or against and be comfortable. Bangor, we have our own, my area, we have some of our own challenges with vacant houses that have been foreclosed upon and sat there for years and years, vacant, no action. The neighbors are upset about it. It's taking housing off the market. I don't know if this could be used as a tool to try and speed up that process. But when I look at what you've done, Representative Kessler, and I look at Senator Chipman and Collins in the very unique situation you face in your areas with housing that maybe is different than mine or the rest of us. I'm willing to help you get this bill to the next level and make your case to the full House and Senate and see if your hard work can turn into something that can help some communities. So that's what we can do.
Excellent. Representative Sakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was dozing off there for a second. It's been going on for a while. I guess just a little, one little point of trivia is California is in one of the top 5 states of out-migration. So we probably shouldn't implement too many of the things that they've been doing if we're looking to keep our local citizens local. The thing I would really like to mention, though, is this is a tax on every taxpayer in every town. My understanding is even though the original bill basically has gone away and then the amendment has been inserted at the state level with this program, Maine State Housing, the tax assessor's office, all the other government agencies that are going to have to process these things are still going to have to process them. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
So all the mechanics in the original bill, I guess the assistance or the expertise of the people in these departments are not going to be necessary for this to work the way you had intended?
So in the original bill, it created the framework of communication between the municipality and the state, and it would have required a beefing up of Maine Revenue Services and to fully implement that version of the bill. With this amendment, it is purely within the municipality's purview as to how they would use that and which offices they would use to implement that. So no involvement on the state level whatsoever.
So what you're saying, when you said what agencies they're going to be involved with, are you referring to state agencies? They're going to need no help or guidance or any interaction with anybody at the state level to implement, I guess, whatever it is they're going to implement.
That's correct. All of the information to make those decisions live within the municipality with their assessors' databases and how they communicate with their own citizens, how they bill them. All of that is just specific to the municipality. There's no state level interaction.
All right. Next, we have Senator Pouliot, followed by Representative Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Are you driving?
Yeah, but I'm buckled up and I'm using hands-free, so. So anyway, I think this is definitely an interesting concept, but to speak to what Representative Perry raised, and Representative Sachs, I mean, to her credit, Representative Sachs' bill is the bill that will actually move the needle on bringing more inventory that is in foreclosed or vacant status that's been abandoned back onto the property tax rolls. And that's the one that deals with land banks, which I've been working with her on now for quite some time. She's been doing a great job with that. This is the other thing too, is that, folks might not like the fact that people are coming from outside of the state of Maine, buying properties here, and then choosing not to use them for the entirety of the year, or people who once lived in and domiciled in Maine, who have now decided to move to Washington, Texas, Florida, any other state that has no income tax for 6 months and a day, and leave their property vacant, while they're not here. Maybe having once been a Maine resident, but being pushed out by the burden of our income tax. People make these moves. That's not what this particular bill is about. But the reality is that properties become vacant, or are vacant for various reasons. But if we disincentivize people from buying property in Maine, that puts downward pressure on property values, which when the town municipalities do a revaluation, they're going to see not as robust growth in property tax receipts. So I really think that there are a number of unintended consequences from this bill that just isn't the right lever for us to pull. I mean, if there's anybody that's on board with increasing access to housing inventory, it's me. I mean, it's a desperate situation. See first-time homebuyers all the time waiting in line to get into properties. The reality is this particular measure is really not going to do that. And I think it's easy for us as legislators to say, well, if it's the local municipality's decision, then that was their decision. And I just think that that's like not being a leader, honestly. I mean, we are kind of defaulting to, oh, they wanted to do it. And we know how a lot of municipal, vote turnouts are. It's like really low engagement, unless the vote is held during, a presidential election or a gubernatorial. I think the only way I could be on favor with this is if the vote had to happen during a presidential or a gubernatorial turnout, because otherwise it's going to be who can charge up the little cohort of folks to show up to, a vote at the local level. That I just really don't think that is, doing justice to the process. So, I mean, I really appreciate the sentiment here of trying to bring the inventory on. I don't see a case here as where that's really going to help drastically. And, I also think there's going to be unintended consequences of a reduction in property tax receipts because the values didn't go up as much as they might have if we had left it to regular market conditions.
So Senator Pouliot, you would, just to clarify, you would support the bill if it was further amended to require the local vote be held during a presidential or gubernatorial election?
I mean, I think that, it's really difficult to get behind anyway, because I'm not sure if it's going to move the needle. But I think that if the people that are proponents of this bill are sincere in having all voices heard in the process, then that really should be given, serious consideration to move it into being done during higher turnout vote occurrences.
Okay, and then you'd support it?
No,
right.
I'm not ever going to support a fee or tax, but I'm saying if you all who are supporting it are serious about having the voices heard, then that's when it should be done.
Okay. Forgot who, do you have a response, Representative Kessler, or are you all set?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, at least when it comes to leadership on the issue. I would love it if the state could take the lead, but the state's just not in the place to do that. But when it comes to letting citizens decide, that is what city councils do. And so when a city council passes an ordinance, it goes through that process, and citizens have redress to be able to challenge those ordinances and participate in a referendum if they so choose. And any actively concerned citizens can make those strategic political decisions of when that would occur. So I think that possible scenario could already play out in this circumstance. So.
And I think Representative Bigford was next, followed by Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of what Senator Pouliot said echoed what I was going to say, but I just want to add to that. And that is, if I ever hit the lottery or whatever and decide to buy a camp on Sebago or any other lake, and I leave in May and go to that camp and come home in October, that's pretty miserable because I have a camp and I don't live in my house for 6 months, that I have to pay a fee. I mean, it's just the wrong way to do it. It's not going to create housing at all. And I appreciate Representative Kessler bringing it up. And I understand the reason, but there's other ways we can do this. Thank you.
Representative Sachs.
Thanks. I had just wanted to make the point, again, thank you, Senator Pouliot, for the shout out for LD 1694 about land bank bill, which is a completely different and actually emphasizes my point that I feel the legislature has taken as much action as possible to support affordable housing through many, many different tools and levers, whether it's in this tax committee or not. I also wanted to point out, having been chair of my town council for many years, that the normal ordinance procedure is such that you can refer an ordinance to a referendum if you desire, which we did for one particular ordinance that we felt we needed public input in order to see if it was supported for enactment or not. So I'd say that's already in here. There's no reason to do so, but appreciate the sentiment around public participation. I know many communities really already are quite involved in many of these ordinances. Thanks.
Do you have anything for us additional? No. Okay. So it looks like we've concluded discussion. Representative Collins.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I don't know if there's ever been a day where publicly Representative Stetkis has said he's agreed with me, and at the same day, the Maine Municipal Association is on the same page with me on a tax bill. So I think I might go buy a lottery ticket, and I think I'm ready to vote on this one.
All right. Seeing there's no further discussion, I believe we have a motion on the table that was ought not to pass. It's made and seconded. So all those in favor of ought not to pass, please signify. Looks like there's
All right, got it. Thank you.
all those opposed to the motion of ought not to pass.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion fails. We're still deliberating LD 1337. Representative Terry. You're on mute, Representative.
So sorry. I would like to make a motion ought to pass as amended.
I second it.
Motion made ought to pass as amended by Representative Terry, seconded by Representative Gramlich. That's using the amendment Representative Kessler brought forward, I assume.
Correct. Yes.
Any further committee discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion of ought to pass as amended, please signify.
Thank you.
All right, all those opposed?
Thank you.
All All right, so that motion prevails. So we'll close the work session in LD 1337, and we will now.
But I'll interrupt quickly to verify that the
Ought not to
that the
pass,
minority
Julie.
was ought not to pass.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll now go into work session on our final bill of the day, which is LD 1406, an act to encourage relocation to rural Maine. And we'll let Julie kind of describe this bill, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, thanks. This bill is sponsored by Senator Stewart. It creates a refundable income tax credit for up to 5 years for a person who relocates from a location that is not a rural area in Maine to a location that is in a rural area. Rural area in the bill being defined as Aroostook County, Somerset County, Piscataquis County, and Washington County. The credit is equal to the, there are two calculations. One is the lesser of the person's property tax bill in the rural area that they have moved to, or $2,000, plus the lesser of the person's internet connectivity expenses, or $1,000. So you add those two calculations together, and that would be the amount of the refundable income tax credit. The credit could be a claim for a total of 5 years for a person who moves to a rural area. In the work session or committee's activities last year, Maine Revenue Services raised technical concerns and indicate several areas in the draft where clarification would be needed. Don't think I've heard anything from anybody otherwise with regard to this bill this session.
All right, looks like the sponsor's with us. Maybe we want to hear from the sponsor. Senator Stewart, welcome.
Oh yes, there was an email from Senator Stewart. I'm sorry. He should explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Julie. It's good to see you all, my friends on the tax committee. I used to serve there, so I feel like I am failing in my duty to provide some sort of tasty treat. That's hard to do over Zoom, but if I see you all soon, I'll deliver on that. So in the interim, you'll recall this is a carryover bill. And in the interim, we've had some discussions about where to go with this. First off, that given that there's sort of that constitutional issue about treating different counties differently, I think that what we would like to do with the bill is take a different approach. One that's sort of similar to, in my mind, sort of similar to the Opportunity Maine tax credit, except that this would be a grant where effectively if you could apply, meet certain benchmarks, and then receive a certain amount of monies up to a certain dollar amount if you do those things. So there's a different bill that I think would probably be helpful for you folks to know about, because of that's where these 4 counties came from. And that bill passed last year and was funded off the appropriations table, which would create a workforce recruiter position that local entities in those 4 counties and those 4 regions, as was identified by DECD, as those that really need help with rural population growth. And that, so effectively you'd have this person who, and the RFP is going out in March for that could effectively travel around, make the pitch to move to rural Maine, line up these folks with employers, and also be able to showcase, the different benefits of living in Maine, one of which will hopefully later or soon be this bill or this program. It's meant to complement that work. And since, again, over the interim, actually yesterday, had a couple of really good conversations with both FAME and DECD and their new liaison there. And sort of the consensus is either of these entities could effectively do this program. If you go with DECD, they would effectively have to bring in other parties that could then distribute those funds locally. I think that's a little bit messier than doing it with FAME, where individuals, just like the Opportunity Main Tax Credit, would sort of apply through that entity and then be eligible to receive that benefit. The one that comes to mind is a seed capital tax credit, which I know this committee is particularly familiar with, where there's a set of funds that are set aside each year, and then folks can come in and apply for those funds at the beginning of the year. And if they meet those, requirements in that grant, they can use the money basically until it's gone. That would be the same idea here, to try to keep the cost of it manageable. What I was sort of thinking is $1,000 for broadband connectivity probably makes sense, particularly if you're trying to draw folks to rural Maine. I think that kind of pairs well with the underlying goal of the legislation, to be able to continue to do things like work remotely and whatnot while living in rural Maine. That could be used, basically the way that I'm sort of envisioning it is that if we set aside, for instance, $100,000, you could have up to 100 families that would be able to relocate to Maine, fit that criteria, and then would get this credit if they do so, and be able to apply for it. Shouldn't say credit, be able to apply for this grant up to $1,000 or less, depending on how much they spent on broadband for that previous year. So that's kind of the direction where the bill is going in. I'm trying to make it more simple. Like I said, I did speak with FAME and DECD. FAME is a bit busy, and I'm not sure if anybody's here from FAME or not today, but I did let them know that the bill was going to be worked this afternoon or this morning. They'd be able to speak, I think, better to their ability to do something like this than I can. So I don't want to speak out of school on their behalf, but happy to answer any questions anybody has. And I do want to say thank you too to Chairwoman Terry. She was very helpful in trying to work on this bill over the interim. And so I just want to say thanks and acknowledge that.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Representative Terry, and followed by Representative Gramlich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And you're welcome for the help. And I hope we can get something done here. I think it's, I think we need some help getting folks to understand and appreciate and enjoy the benefits of living in the northern part of the state. Northern, Western, away from all the people. So I have a couple of things. One for Senator Stewart. Are in your conversations that you had with FAME and DECD, did you sort of switch your thoughts around on providing property tax benefit for these folks?
Thank you. That's a good question. I mean, the big thing for me that stuck out was, what's the price tag going to be? And what's reasonable to be able to get it off of the appropriations table throughout some sort of budgeting process, whatever that's going to look like. So there's sort of, I'm of two minds, right? Obviously, it's a more appealing program if you can include, whatever your property tax burden was in the previous year, particularly where if you're moving here for the first year, you don't qualify for a homestead exemption that would be able to help offset some of those, some of that tax burden. So that's a thought, and the committee could certainly do that. And if the committee thinks that, that's the way to do it, we can include that as a provision of the bill. And then ultimately, when we get to the budgeting process and seeing, what's on the table and how to sort of finagle that, and the sort of adjustments that can later get made to bills, we might have to tweak it down some in the future. So I just don't want necessarily the Appropriations Committee to get a bill with a huge sticker shock that's going to be well outside of a range that would be feasible to get off the table. And I think too, if we can, get a proof of concept here over the next year, we can then look at maybe, instilling it into the budget in some capacity going forward. Some sort of longer term program, similar to like the Opportunity Maine tax credit that, exists sort of in perpetuity.
Right. So if I may, Senator, follow up.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the thought of helping 100 families at $1,000 a pop. I've been doing some work with a group called Boots to Roots, which is a military recruitment company that brings folks to Maine. And the numbers that they present on bringing 100 families in, the return on investment for those 100 families is unbelievable. Not only is it mom and dad who are getting jobs in the area, but also eventually, if the kids are young, then they're going into the school system. Once they get to be working age, it's adding more and more people as we go. So I think that with the goal of helping 100 families, while that might seem like a small number at the moment, it could potentially be a massive amount of people over not a really long period of time. So I appreciate that very much. And I'm glad to see that Mr. Norbert and Mr. McLaughlin were both listening in and jumped in on our meeting, because I think that hearing from them in regards to the conversation that they had with Senator Stewart over the past couple of days would be really super helpful for me anyway. So when we get to it, if Mr. Norbert or Mr. McLaughlin can talk to this idea, that'd be great.
Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator Chipman. Hello, Senator Stewart. It's great to see you. And just as a side note, I think we will be seeing each other next week, and I'm partial to dark chocolate. Thank you very much. But in regard to your bill, I just wanted to, I so appreciate the initiative to do all we can for rural Maine. I've said this before. I used to work up in Aroostook County and in Washington County, so I'm really familiar with a lot of the barriers that are presented to folks up in that part of our state. However, and I know people will say, oh, Representative Gramlich, she's from Southern Maine, it's a different animal. I will say anywhere west of the I-95 corridor, even in York County, is rural. And my in-laws live in Kennebunk, and they don't have broadband. So, I'm just wondering, I thought what I heard you say was that you had addressed some of the issues in terms of the constitutionality relative to singling out 4 counties. And I'm just curious if there's been any change relative to that, or maybe you could just speak to that a little bit, because I think the idea is great. And to Representative Terry's point in terms of the return on investment, I think that's really a critical component when we're trying to not only incentivize people to move to Maine, but what they can bring back to the state in terms of revenue. So you could just kind of speak to that a little bit, Senator. That would be really helpful.
Sure. So good to see you, Representative. Thanks for the question. So the constitutional issue comes up with regard to tax treatment, which is why the current proposal is to not do a tax credit, but to do a grant. And so then you totally avoid all the constitutional issues at that point. There was a thought that you could maybe do something with similar to opportunity zones, but that it got tricky pretty fast. So probably the cleanest way to do it is just a grant in these specific areas. And as I mentioned a minute ago about there's a different bill that specifically deals with recruiting for these 4 counties. And that's where this is sort of meant to be like a kind of a marriage between those things. That's why the list is there. And in talking with DECD about it last year, when we first identified which counties to start with, those were the ones that, at least at the time, Kate Foy and I, when we were collaborating and talking through what would make sense, those were the 4 that were identified as, if you do these 4 counties, that's a good place to start. And so where it's more or less a pilot program, I'm optimistic that it's going to work, right? That it is going to prove proof of concept, and we'll be able to, put more money into the program going forward after we know it works. And it's a good way to draw folks to different parts of the state. But those are the areas that really need the counties that are sort of most desperate for population. And I think, if you look at the redistricting that we just went through, right, it's reflected there, I think in a pretty good way. Like my district's now going to run from Presque Isle to Millinocket. And if you told people 20 years that would be the case, they'd have laughed you out of the county. But we're in pretty rough shape up here from a population standpoint.
Follow up if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
I really appreciate that, elaborating on that point, Senator Stewart. And I really love the way you articulated it in terms of a pilot project. I'm in support of the initiative for sure. I'm hopeful that we can get this over the finish line and use it as a model to maybe be replicated in other parts of the state. So thank you so much for bringing this forward and all the work that you've done on it in the interim.
Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several clarifying questions, if I may. Good morning, Senator Stewart. Is there written form of your amendment? I've looked through all of my materials and emails and I have not seen it.
No, and I apologize for sending you on a scavenging mission that was probably unnecessary. We do not have a written form just yet, and part of that is because I think there's still a few key points to consider, and I think that the committee's kind of got to make some choices here in which way they want to go if they support the measure. As you heard Representative Terry talk about, do we include a property tax offset for new folks coming into Maine, or do you not, to try to keep the sticker price lower? That's a choice that folks are going to have to make, as well as where do you couch it? And again, hopefully Bill doesn't get too upset with me, but I think Fame makes the most sense. And you folks will have an opportunity to hear from both. I think there's pros and cons of doing it either way. If you do it through DECD, there'll be more of an administrative cost, I think, than if you were to do it through Fame, which is sort of more of a direct, interaction with folks that apply. DECD was more sort of finding pass-through agencies that would then connect regionally with folks, which is fine. And if that's what folks decide to do, that's fine. But it does mean that if you allocate $100,000 to it, that maybe 20% of that gets eaten up in administration. And so now you're looking at 80 families instead of 100. So these are just all different points to consider. And hopefully we can do those here today.
Right. So if I could continue then, what I keep hearing you say, is this for in-state migration, or is this people from out of state going, or does that not matter?
Well, I mean, ideally, it pairs well with the workforce recruiter position, and that role is really intended to be more of an out-of-state, bringing folks to Maine and specifically to rural Maine. In theory, again, that's a policy choice that you folks can make here. The goal is not necessarily to say, like, if somebody lives in Penobscot County and they move over one town, that now they get $1,000, benefit that, their neighbors don't previously get. So these are considerations to make. And I think it, where it is a pilot proposal, you could go either way. I think you're going to get more return on that $1,000 if you do make it, out of state, bringing folks here, because these are completely new folks, right? And so these are folks that are contributing to, our economy entirely new, as opposed to just moving from one town to another.
Right. And so I guess the devil for me really is in the details. Big shocker, I know, to everybody who ever goes to this committee. I also would really want to make sure, Senator, that again, your original bill just talked about population. This is different in terms of workforce development and incentives to bring people to the state to settle in these 4 counties, pairing it with the workforce. So just very different. And I want to make sure that we are clear on that intent if we're going to continue to work the bill. I also would say outcome measurements. How do you know that it was this that brought people here. We mentioned the Main Seed tax credit. We're going to be talking about a bill coming up about that. And I think it really behooves us as part of the process that this committee goes to, is to put in some measurable ways when we review this with OPEGA later on, 5 years from now, to say, is this doing what we want it to do? And I really strongly think this will be a refrain I will have going forward, no matter what the legislation. You just get to be the first one, Senator. Thanks.
No problem. And I understand. I'm all for accountability as well. And that's why I mentioned, hoping that we can prove a proof of concept here. Having some way to measure it makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe that's a tally in the pro column for doing it, with a pass-through agency through DECD, because then you could say, the person that we were working with specifically cited this program, and that was the thing that did it for us, as opposed to, or maybe have like some sort of survey that you could administer through FAME for recipients after the fact and see if it, what was the thing that tipped the scales for that particular family, and how much, did it weigh. I don't know. I don't know how you want to do it, but I understand what you're saying, and I think it makes sense to have some sort of accountability.
And what would you say, Senator, if it's an elderly couple who now wants to move back to their old, their home, and it's not going to be tied to necessarily any workforce? But again, your first bill just talked about population increase. We want people to move here. And so is this now going to be tied to some workforce incentive, or you have to be a working family, of whatever that definition is?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to be a working family. I mean, I think anytime that more people are moving into a place, it's got positive implications for that place. For instance, those folks, like you to use your hypothetical, if it was an elderly couple that just retired and are looking to relocate back to Maine, they're paying sales tax in Maine, they're paying excise tax in Maine, they're paying property tax in Maine. They're engaging in the community and are are providing a benefit to people in all those different ways. I mean, obviously we have a workforce problem, right? That's a big deal. I wouldn't want to necessarily segregate out, based on age, how that's going to work. But the thing is, we've got a lot of elderly up in my neck of the woods that are heading south. They're not coming north. So if we could change that trend, that's a positive thing too, in my mind.
Great. Do you have any other questions, Representative Sachs?
No, thank you so much, Senator.
So I guess I'd like to weigh in and say that I share some of the same questions Representative Sachs has raised, and I'm really struggling with this bill. For those of you who are on this committee in the previous legislature, just before the pandemic hit, you'll recall that we had a similar bill. We were looking to provide incentives and offer grants or funds to people to move to rural Maine to help the economy there. And at the time, we had some of the same questions where, how much funding were people going to get? And if they move from one county to another, would they get the funding? And who's going to administer it? And what qualifies as an area of high unemployment, and so on and so forth. And I think we had 3 work sessions on that bill. And it was impossible for us at the time to get a handle on the details and coming up with something that would work. And a lot of those so we ultimately decided not to pass the bill. And a lot of those same questions, I think, apply. This bill is very similar to that bill. And so without knowing how it's going to work, and I appreciate you being here, Senator Stewart, and doing your best to answer questions, but we don't have the details nailed down. That is making it hard for me to be something I can get behind. I also forwarded out an email to everybody on the committee that you may or may not have had time to read, but it's a link to an article that appeared in the Bangor Daily News. Caribou School sees unprecedented spike in enrollment. So Caribou is in Aroostook County. And the article talks about how Aroostook County, it says, like much of rural Maine, saw a massive spike in home buyers during the pandemic as families left crowded cities to come to places less affected by the spread of COVID-19. With more parents working remotely and kids attending school online, it was easier than ever to pack up and relocate. The high enrollment bodes well for a community that struggled for decades without migration with its younger population. And in that article, it has a graph, and it shows they had 100 new students just last fall alone in that one school district in Caribou sign up to go to school, which is a huge spike for the school district of that size. But there's a graph that shows that the majority of those new students came from downstate. They didn't come from out of state, they came from other parts of Maine. So what we're seeing in the greater Portland area in southern Maine with people moving here from out of state and putting pressure on the real estate market, folks that are in this area are now, where they can't find a home here, they're moving to places more rural, like Aroostook County, as this article illustrates. And so, you know, it, in a way, and like right after that hearing on that previous bill 2 years ago, the constituent who had asked that bill to be submitted contacted me and said, you know, well, the committee couldn't wrap its head around the details and how to administer the bill and get something that could pass and work. It's already happening, as she said, a couple of months into the pandemic. And this was just before the pandemic that we heard that bill. She said it's already happening. These people are moving to rural Maine because of the pandemic, because they can work remotely, they can take their job with them. And so, you know, it seems like it's happening without a bill, without a program. People are moving to rural areas, they're moving to Caribou, they're moving to Piscataquis County, they're moving to Somerset County already. And so because it's happening, it seems to be happening already, and we don't have the details nailed down of how this would work. I'm not sure this is something that's in a form that I can support at this point. With that, we have Representative Collins.
Mr. Chair, could I respond just briefly?
Well, I didn't have any questions, but you're welcome to respond.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that, because I mean, obviously, you know, I'm in Presque Isle, Caribou's right next door, and I've talked to the superintendent about what's happening there. I mean, you're right that there was a lot of attention about that particular school district that was gaining population. That's not the case across the board up here. In fact, there's other places that, and don't get me wrong, the pandemic has been helpful in that regard, in forcing folks, you know, to try to consider living other places. But that's not going to be the case forever, right? And we've sort of had a little blip in one particular town because of that. And I can tell you as a realtor, the folks that I'm selling properties to up here are by and large, and I don't like this term, but from away and from outside of the state of Maine, right? Not just within Maine, but they're from Massachusetts, they're from Connecticut, they're from other places that typically have bigger cities and whatnot. So it's not just, you know, there certainly might be some new enrollees in some school districts that are from the southern part of the state, but I don't want that one article to take away from the fact that we still have a really serious problem up here with population growth. There's a couple of really good reports I'd encourage you to read beyond that one article, both the Tarnished Crown Report and Caring for the Crown Report. Those are both put out by a group called the Aroostook Partnership, which is a public-private entity up here that deals specifically, one of the major things that they work on is population growth. I can tell you that this is not a problem that's going away, you know, overnight because of the pandemic and a little blip in population growth that may have come from that. To your second point, Mr. Chair, if it would be helpful, I'm more than happy to work with Julie to pull together some sort of formal proposal to put in front of you. And I could do that, you know, as easy as this afternoon if she's got time, just so that you've got something written. I've heard that mentioned a couple of times. It would be helpful to have something written to see in front of you, and I understand that. And if that would be helpful at the conclusion of today's hearing, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because to have something to look at, I mean, I'm trying to understand how this is going to work. Like if somebody moves to Madawaska, are they going to get the grant versus someone who moves to Caribou or someone who moves to Freiburg? I mean, who's going to determine who qualifies? And if they live in one rural part of the state, they may not get it. In another area, they might, because they're in one of these 4 counties. And, you know, I don't know how the whole thing's going to work, and I can't envision how that's going to work. So there's just a lot of unanswered questions, I guess, at this point, and we don't have any draft of an amendment to look at. We had other bills we carried over that, and just today we had 2 other bills that we carried over where the sponsors came with amendments that we could see and sent those to us in advance. And we have nothing on this bill that I've seen for anything to look at. So it's just that I'm not supporting a bill.
Mr. Chair.
Been able to see or read. Do you have a point of information, Senator Puliak? So we have 4 other people signed up.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we table this bill.
Okay, so we have a motion to
Second that motion.
Is that seconded by you, Representative Stetkes? Yeah. So
Yes,
is
sir.
Yep. So we have a motion by Senator Pouliot to table the bill, seconded by Representative Stetkes. That's the non-debatable motion. So I guess we're in a posture of voting. All those in favor of tabling the bill, please signify.
think that's everybody, correct?
Appears to be unanimous of all
Yep.
that.
Thank you.
That bill is now tabled. Okay, great. And maybe when we take that up, we'll have more details and we can move forward with something. So that concludes the work session on LD 1406, which is the final bill on our schedule for today. Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to continue the discussion and ask to speak with Mr. Norbert, but since I have the floor, I would love it if Senator Stewart, Julie, and Mr. Norbert, perhaps also Mr. McLaughlin, could get together and come up with some language. I'm happy to jump in on that meeting. I have a couple of ideas myself, but since the motion is tabled, I'll leave it at that.
So even though we've tabled the bill, you still would like to hear from folks? No.
Nope, they can do that on their own time, and then we will reschedule this for another couple of days.
Okay, since they were here, I didn't know if you still wanted to hear from them, but yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I guess that's everything for today. Do you have anything for us, Julie, before we adjourn? No? You have anything else for us, Representative Terry, or we're all set for now?
Nope, just a note. I think Julie sent the calendar maybe yesterday that we did move everything from Thursday to Friday for next week. So we'll see you all on Thursday. Looking forward to it.
Well,
no,
we're going to meet Tuesday.
I mean in person.
Yep. So we'll be here Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and then we'll be in session obviously on Thursday, and then we'll have our work sessions on Friday that were previously scheduled for Thursday will be Friday morning instead. Everything will move to Friday the 11th. Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. There was just one other sort of complication of that. Originally, we had scheduled for Friday the presentation of the tax expenditure review working group. That will no, we had it originally scheduled on Tuesday. Other bills scheduled that day are moved to Friday. However, the presentation of the tax expenditure review working group will be on Monday, the 8th. Friday did not work for that presentation.
Yeah, that's Tuesday the 8th. So yeah, that was a presentation we were going to have on Thursday the 10th, but since we moved everything to the 11th, that presentation will now be on Tuesday the 8th after the public hearing. So we'll have the public hearings on all the bills that are scheduled, then we'll have the presentation. Thursday we won't be meeting as a committee because we have session, and Friday we'll just have work sessions on several bills starting at 9 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, I believe she said Monday.
Yeah, but it's
Is
Tuesday.
that correct?
Yeah.
It's Tuesday.
The 8th is Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's Tuesday. I apologize.
All right. Well, I guess that's everything for today, folks. So we'll see you everybody on Tuesday morning, and have a good weekend.
Yeah.